It being 4 p.m., pursuant to order made on Tuesday, April 21st, 2026, I now invite the Honourable Minister for Finance and National Revenue to make a statement. The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 83.1, I would like to table in both official languages the Spring Economic Update documents for 2026, including the Notice of Ways and Means motion. The details of the measures are contained in these documents. Pursuant to Standing Order 83.2, I'm requesting that an order of the day be designated for consideration of these motions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, fellow Canadians, when I rose in this House to deliver Budget 2025, I presented an ambitious plan to navigate the current challenges and harness Canada's many strengths to position our country for success for decades to come. The changes we are witnessing are sudden and unprecedented. From geopolitical shifts to supply chain disruptions to rapid technological breakthroughs, including in artificial intelligence, the world is changing quickly and Canada must adapt to thrive. That's why the Prime Minister called on Canadians to seize the opportunity and build at a speed and scale not seen in generations. To build Canada strong, to build sustainably and responsibly, to build a Canada for all, Mr. Speaker, because we believe in Canada.
In Budget 2025, Mr. Speaker, we made generational investments to build communities, to empower Canadians, and to protect our country. Now the journey must continue. We do this by drawing on Canada's unique strengths and capabilities. We have the most educated workforce, Mr. Speaker, something we should all be proud of. Yes, we should applaud all our people, the strong people we have in Canada. We have a very strong industrial base that builds ships, cars, and planes. We have critical minerals to power the economy of the 21st century. We are an energy superpower in renewables and conventional and nuclear energy. We are the only G7 country with a free trade agreement with all other G7 nations, giving us preferential market access to 1.5 billion people around the world. This is Canada, Mr. Speaker. This is the Canada we can be proud of, a country that is strong, a country that is ambitious, a country that is confident. Above all, as the Prime Minister said, let's lead with the strengths of our values and the value of our strengths. Canada is resilient. Canada is resourceful. Canadians are resourceful people. So together, we can chart a path forward to the fog of uncertainty, because Canada has what the world wants and increasingly needs. We have the right plan, we're building big, we're moving fast, and the good news, Mr. Speaker, we're just getting started. And I know in their heart, Mr. Speaker, that my Conservative colleagues also feel the same. I can see that across the aisle. Mr. Speaker, those are serious times, and Canadians expect us to be good stewards of our economy and manage our public finances with thoughtful fiscal discipline.
Over the past 6 months, we have supported Canadians with concrete measures to make everyday life more affordable whilst strengthening our economy. And we have built the second fastest growing economy in the G7, whilst reducing our projected deficit for 2025-26 by more than $11 billion, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this is the essence of being strong fiscal manager, to make sure that we made the right decision, Mr. Speaker, to ensure not only benefits today but for future generations. Mr. Speaker, our economy is resilient, driven by GDP growth, rising incomes, and obviously more jobs. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, this is good news for Canadians. It reflects a stronger, more productive economy. And we have made this happen through pragmatic and targeted investments, through making Canada the most competitive jurisdiction in the G7 for investment, including to the productivity superdeduction, and through our trade diversification strategy, Mr. Speaker. And we have ensured that as revenues have grown, two-thirds of this increase over the past year has been directed toward affordability measures that make a real difference in the lives of Canadians. This is the true essence to be Canadian, Mr. Speaker. Guided by our commitment to spend less so we can invest more, and building on the comprehensive expenditure review, our government continued to reduce spending, improve efficiency, and deliver better value for Canadians. As a result, Mr. Speaker, projected deficits are lower over the fiscal horizon.
Great job.
Deficits are lower over the fiscal horizon. We also remain firmly on track to balance day-to-day operating spending with revenues by 28-29 and to keep the deficit to GDP ratio on a steady downward path. Mr. Speaker, this country is going at unprecedented speed. Just to put that in perspective, Canada is the second fastest growing economy in the G7. We're growing almost twice as much as Germany, almost twice as much as Japan, and almost 3 times more than Italy, Mr. Speaker. This is because Canadians are resourceful. This is because we have the right plan. This is because, as Canadians, there's nothing which is beyond the limit for us, Mr. Speaker.
Canadians understand that by spending less, we can invest more. Our fiscal position is strong and allows us to build a Canada that is strong and fair.
A Canada that is not just for some, most of the time, but for all the times, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. That's how we build.
Our ambitious plan to build the strongest economy in the G7 is on track, Mr. Speaker. We are delivering on our plan through the work led by the Major Project Office to supercharge 15 projects that are projected to create over 60,000 jobs and drive $126 billion in new investment.
Wow.
We are delivering on our plan to a defense industrial strategy that will increase our defense export by 50% and support 125,000 high-paying careers with an anticipated $125 billion downstream economic benefit by 2035.
Well done.
And we are delivering on our plan to an automotive strategy that will protect a cornerstone of our economy while growing an industry that supports 500,000 jobs. We are delivering on our plan, Mr. Speaker, because we believe in Canada. We believe in Canada. Mr. Speaker, this is a moment for Canadians to lead, for our nation to be ambitious. We are building fast we are building Canadian, we are building sustainably. From the copper and gold mine expansions in British Columbia to the Darlington new nuclear project in Ontario, we are powering the next generation of prosperity. In the north, we are proud to support an Inuit-owned renewable energy project in Iqaluit, breaking the Arctic's reliance on diesel and returning energy sovereignty to our people. I can see smile across the aisle, Mr. Speaker. We are also expanding this model. There's more good news. We're also expanding this model of economic reconciliation to the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program, supporting First Nation equity in major projects like the Chatham to Lakeshore Transmission Line. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Bay du Nord project advanced significantly under our new government and positions Canada to be a supplier of choice at a time where energy security is top of mind. Ces projets, Monsieur le Président.
These projects and others like them across the country are creating thousands of high-paying careers for Canadians and strengthening communities from coast to coast to coast. My friends, advancing economic prosperity also means building a more sustainable future. That includes concrete climate policies that support growth, lower costs, and strengthen Canada's competitiveness.
Et nous sommes sur la bonne voie.
And we are on the right path to conserve 30% of Canada's lands and waters by 2030, Mr. Speaker. A great achievement.
To report to this House that the dream of Canada is alive and well, Mr. Speaker. Young people increasingly see themselves in building Canada strong, and we will be there with them, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président, notre...
Mr. Speaker, our vision is clear. A Canada strong at home and a Canada strategic abroad. Canada is seen on the global stage as moving with pragmatism and purpose. Over the past year, we have shown that Canada is a top destination for foreign direct investment. We attracted nearly $100 billion in investments, the highest level in almost 2 decades, and secured around 20 new economic and defence partnerships across 4 continents.
Mr. Speaker, we're just getting started. Everyone in this House will be happy to learn that in September, we will host the first ever Canada Investment Summit in Toronto to unlock even more opportunities, building on our trade diversification strategy that we outlined in 2025. Mr. Speaker, Canada is seen as a trusted partner to deliver the energy and the food security the world needs, both now and for decades to come. In a volatile environment, investors choose Canada for a reason. We offer unparalleled stability, predictability, and opportunity. And we will continue, Mr. Speaker, by making Canada strong. People want to invest in this country, and we will be there with them. That said, Mr. Speaker, we know that affordability is the single most pressing issue for many, many Canadians. I think you might want to listen. So we are relentlessly focused on what we can control, Mr. Speaker, delivering targeted support where it matters most while our economic plan takes hold. A boost today and a bridge to tomorrow to ease the cost of living of Canadians. Le 5 juin.
On the 5th of June, more than 12 million Canadians will receive additional support through the new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. Millions more are already benefiting from our middle-class tax cut and automatic federal benefits, ensuring they receive the support they need. The suspended federal fuel excise tax on gas and diesel across Canada aims to reduce Canadians' bills by up to 10 cents per litre on regular gasoline and 4 cents per litre on diesel. Mr. Speaker, that relief is already being felt by consumers throughout the country. With the Prime Minister, we have made the National School Food Programme permanent, and 400,000 children have access to healthy meals from coast to coast to coast, whilst their parents are saving $800 a year on groceries. First-time home buyers are saving up to $50,000 since we eliminated the goods and services tax on homes priced at $1 million or under. And thanks to the Canadian Dental Care Plan, close to 9 million Canadians can now access affordable dental care.
Mr. Speaker, from the beginning, we have placed people and affordability at the center of our economic plan because we know that these pressures are real and demand immediate action because we believe in a Canada for all, Mr. Speaker. We believe in a Canada for all indeed. And this brings me to the spring economic update that Canada's new government is tabling today.
Our objective is clear: to build a stronger, more independent, more resilient economy. That work begins by investing in our future and by giving Canadians the opportunity to take part in building it.
Canada Strong Fund, we are creating Canada's first national sovereign wealth fund, Mr. Speaker. Something that Canadians should all be proud. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Under this government, this is an historic moment, Mr. Speaker. Generations will look back at this Prime Minister, this government, this Parliament to say that we have been there for them, Mr. Speaker. We're building long-term wealth, Mr. Speaker, and growth. And I know my colleagues across the aisle are excited because I can hear them shouting, Mr. Speaker. A sovereign fund, to make it real for people watching at home, Mr. Speaker, is essentially a national savings and investment account designed to grow wealth for future generations. It's about taking action today for future generations. The fund will invest in key strategic Canadian projects and companies. It's going to be creating jobs. It's going to support innovation. It's going to make Canada more competitive, Mr. Speaker. Canadians themselves will be able to take part directly by investing in the fund, sharing in our growth, and contributing to the country we are building together, because we are all in for Canada, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, investing in our future also means investing in the people who are building that future. That's why this update is focused on helping workers and young people gain the skills, the experience, and the support that they need to succeed, and bridging them with opportunities.
Opportunities for young Canadians to give back to their country by launching Team Canada Strong as part of a nationwide effort to recruit, to train, and hire 80,000 to 100,000 new skilled trade workers. Mr. Speaker, this is a step change in how we approach that. We're going to have the people to build this country together across our nation. This means real pathways into skilled trades with paid training and hand-on experience. It means more opportunities for employers to hire and train young workers. It means a $5,000 bonus when you complete your Red Seal certification. And most importantly, it means being part of building a stronger Canada. Mr. Speaker, it's going to inspire a new generation of young people in our country. And at the same time, we are making education more affordable by extending the increase to Canada student grants and the interest-free Canada student loans, which will benefit thousands of students across our nation. My colleagues and I, we have been across this nation, the Prime Minister as well, we've listened to young people, and they said, give us a hand now. Make sure we can study, make sure we can be part of this, and we have answered, Mr. Speaker. We're glad to do our part for our young people. And we're doing much, much more because growth depends on people and on giving them the tools to succeed. That's at the core of a Canada for all, Mr. Speaker.
You're here. You're here.
Et c'est grâce à...
And it's thanks to this new generation of builders that we will be able to build enough homes here in Canada. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to one of the most pressing challenges that Canadians are facing today, and that is, obviously, housing. Housing is a key pillar of affordability, and we've made significant and tangible progress to build more affordable housing across the country.
Prices are down 20% and rents are down 9% nationally, Mr. Speaker. For many families, this is starting to translate into real relief, but we would all agree in this House, that more work needs to be done. This update continues the work of Build Canada Homes with a plan to increase supply, lower costs, and help more Canadians find a safe and affordable home. So we are cutting red tape to build homes faster, supporting innovation in construction, unlocking over $7 billion in low-cost financing, boosting housing supply and protecting construction jobs across the country in partnership with provinces and territory. We're helping those most in need by extending support for people experiencing homelessness across our nation and ensuring survivors of gender-based violence have access to a safe place. Mr. Speaker, because we believe in a Canada for home. Let me speak about defense, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, security starts here at home, but it also extends well beyond our borders. We have undertaken a major mission to rebuild, to rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces. Over the last year, just the last year, we've invested over $63 billion into defense and security for our country. This is a historic shift in support for our military, and it is already delivering concrete results. In March, just last March, NATO confirmed that Canada has achieved its 2% defense spending target 5 years ahead of schedule. 5 years ahead of schedule.
There was a part that I thought the opposition would applaud would be this one, Mr. Speaker. There's so much you can ask. Monsieur le Président, nous continuons.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue to strengthen our defense capabilities. We will equip our forces with modern Canadian-made equipment and will invest in our workers and our defense industry. And because national security begins with those who serve our country, we announced the largest pay increase for the Canadian Armed Forces in a generation, and recruitment is now at its highest rate in 30 years.
For Canada. Let me talk about stronger communities and safer communities.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, strong communities are also safe communities and communities that bring people together. That's why this update invests in the things that make communities stronger, safer, and more connected across our great country. We are moving forward with a financial crimes agency and a national anti-fraud strategy helping protect Canadians and our seniors in particular, and to strengthen trust in our financial system. We're also taking steps to make communities safer with strong tools to address crime and better protect public access, Mr. Speaker. We have listened to communities across the country. We have listened to people, and we understand that they need safety in their place of worship, and we are there for them, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président, nous invitons.
Mr. Speaker, we're investing in the vitality of our communities and in the programs and the people who support those communities. And that includes the most significant investment in our sports system in 20 years. To give young...
I would have thought that clapping for sport was Canadian in a way. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to say this again. I was getting excited there, but I think it's important to say it again. It's the most significant investment in sports in 20 years. Yes.
Try again. Try again.
I give them a second chance, Mr. Speaker. Pour donner aux jeunes.
To give young people better access and better support for high-performance athletes with additional funding of $755 million. Canadians across the country understand the power of sport. They understand how it brings us together and how it has an impact on our communities. We saw it last year during the Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, and we see it every day on our rinks, in our sports centres, and in our schoolyards. A Canada for all must also be a Canada where sport is accessible for everyone.
So our strategy from the playground to the podium will make a real difference. Unite our country and inspire a generation of young Canadians in a very true Canadian way, Mr. Speaker. This is Canada at its best, and we're going to support our young people and young athletes. And along our coast, the same spirit of hard work and community lives in our small craft harbors. They are more than infrastructure. A smile for small craft harbors. I'm looking for. Mr. Speaker, let me restart again. They are more than infrastructure. They are a foundation for coastal communities, supporting over 5 million Canadians, sustaining Indigenous traditions, empowering thousands of jobs in the fish and seafood industry. This is why we're investing almost $1 billion to repair and strengthen these vital harbors. Regardless of which side of the aisle you sit in, Mr. Speaker, you know that when we invest in this place, we invest in the people who depend on them. And these are not isolated measures. We made these investments with a purpose. And let me make it real for you, Mr. Speaker, and colleagues in this House. In Budget 2025, we made generational investments in infrastructure to build stronger communities, delivering tangible benefits across the country. Now, Team Canada Strong will empower a new generation of workers from those same communities to help build the local infrastructure the government is investing in. Whether that means homes, sport facilities, or transit system, these projects will be built by workers in our communities for our communities. Because when communities are strong, safe, and connected, Canadians thrive together because we're all in for Canada, Mr. Speaker.
To conclude, Mr. Speaker, I know.
Keep going. Keep going. More.
There's so much more to talk about, Mr. Speaker, but I know that Canadians understand that we're building Canada strong. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, la mise à jour économique.
This spring economic update reflects the progress that we've made and the important work that remains to be done. Building a strong Canada while ensuring that progress and economic growth are felt by all Canadians all across the country.
Mr. Speaker, for businesses, for farmers, and our entrepreneurs and workers, our fishers and Canadians from all walks of life, making sure the projects that build our nation move forward and that people have the support they need to get ahead, especially those affected by unjust tariffs, Mr. Speaker. We're all thinking about them, and we can tell them we have your back. Every single member here, we have your back, and we're thinking about you. Il s'agit de bâtir un Canada.
It's about building Canada strong for all, Mr. Speaker.
When we build a Canada strong together, there is no limit to what we can achieve. As Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen showed us on his recent journey to the moon, the sky is no longer the limit for us. So let's seize the moment, let's be ambitious, and let's build Canada strong together.
Okay, we have to move on with questions. We have to move on to questions. The Honourable Member for Calgary East.
This Prime Minister is just another Liberal. He said he would spend less, and then he doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit.
Member may start over.
This Prime Minister is just another expensive Liberal. He said he would spend less, and then he doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit. Liberals liberal, and they doubled the national debt. Every single year, debt servicing costs are going to go up, and they're going to be more than what the provinces get in healthcare transfers or what's collected in GST revenue. In fact, debt servicing costs are going to go up by 50% by 2031, all on the backs of hardworking Canadians. This is all while the Liberals gave Canadians the worst housing debt, the most housing costs, the highest food inflation, and the second highest unemployment in the entire G7. Wow. This economic update is more debt, more costs, more taxes, and more spending, all by the same old Liberals. In what world is it fair that this Liberal Prime Minister is giving more money to his banker and bondholder buddies than what goes to doctors and nurses in healthcare transfers?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, let me help my colleague. I know it's Tuesday and it's late. He will need to update his QP card. Actually, Mr. Speaker, the deficit is lower, Mr. Speaker. Lower, Mr. Speaker, and growth is up. So let me help him. Deficit down, growth is up, Mr. Speaker. And you know what is surprising, Mr. Speaker? They can shout as much as they want. You know, I come from Shawinigan. I can handle these guys. One thing I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, it's amazing to me that they would not take the time to talk about sport, Mr. Speaker, to build a stronger nation together. They would not talk about small craft harbors. They would not talk about the things that will build Canada strong. On this side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, we'll support young people, we'll support our workers, we'll support our industry. We'll build Canada strong together.
The Honourable Member for Joliette-Manawan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The economic update does not take into account what the American president said and did on April 2nd. With that degree, a majority of products that are exported to the United States that come from Quebec or Ontario are hit with a 25% tariff. What's the point of an update that's not up to date. When we asked the Prime Minister about this issue, he said that the information would be in the update. What's the point of having an update that's not up to date? The Honourable Minister of Finance. I'd like to thank my colleague for an important question, and I mentioned it in my speech. We are aware that at the macroeconomic level, there are good results, but we're also very concerned, like him, about workers in the aluminum sector, in the steel sector, the automotive sector, and others. But one thing that is certain, and my colleague will recognize this, is the best thing that we can do is support our workers and to build a strong economy together. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the Bloc Québécois will join us for once and make sure that we can pass legislation to support our workers, to support our industries, and ensure that we're going to build a strong Canada all together.
The honourable member for University Rosedale.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to rise on behalf of the people of University Rosedale, many of whom could benefit from the Canada Disability Tax Credit but have found this process difficult and onerous to navigate. Could the minister elaborate on how this spring economic update will make this regime more easy to navigate for Canadians living with disabilities and for the healthcare workers who support them, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, I'm sure everyone in University of Rosedale watching are proud of their new member of Parliament. It's just a few days and she's already making a difference. She is right, Mr. Speaker, and she has the experience. In fact, what we have made is to make sure that people who need the disability tax credit, those who are entitled, can do it faster, Mr. Speaker. We have listened to community, we have listened to people, and what they were telling us, Mr. Speaker, is that the process was very cumbersome. They could not get the benefit. You know what, Mr. Speaker? This is about being a true Liberal. We are fiscally responsible, but we're also there for people. We're listening to communities, and Mr. Speaker, I can tell you 2/3 of the additional revenue that we have received, we have used the proceeds to make sure we make life more affordable for Canadians. That is truly building Canada strong for all.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's nothing in the spring economic update on surveillance pricing. There is nothing on excessive tax profits as oil companies are set to make some $90 billion in excessive profits. Meanwhile, there's only meanwhile, two-thirds of the $140 billion for housing is actually for developers in lost revenues. And the government does not, in the economic budget, has the wherewithal to ensure the right fit program for people with disabilities are funded. They only need $500,000 to keep the program going for people with disabilities to find the home. Why didn't the government support people with disabilities?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I have enormous respect for my colleague. She raised a very important question. With respect to the disability tax credit, Mr. Speaker, we have listened to community. We have made sure that it's more efficient. Mr. Speaker, we want to make sure that people who are entitled to benefit can find the process easier. But one thing I want to say is that all the new measures, 50% of all the new measures we have adopted in the spring economic update, Mr. Speaker, is to help Canadians from coast to coast. So, Mr. Speaker, we're always going to have the back of Canadians. We're going to support our workers, support our industry. We're going to build Canada strong together.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you look at let's look at the facts. The previous Liberal Prime Minister projected a deficit of $31 billion. Today, we have learned that the government has doubled that deficit. They've announced a sovereign wealth fund. The minister has compared us to Norway and Saudi Arabia. But Norway and Saudi Arabia actually export their natural resources. That's why they have budgetary surpluses. Canada is in a deficit. The government is spending using Canadians' credit cards. $25 billion will be charged to Canadians' credit cards to begin the wealth fund. There's just 3 lines in here about renegotiating CUSMA. 3 lines. What about our industries? Steel, aluminum, forestry, the automotive industry. A deal with our greatest economic partner deserves more than 3 lines in this document. Does he not even care about getting a deal signed? Mr. Speaker, I understand that this is an important document. My colleague may not have had the time to go through all of it. I look forward to talking about how the deficit has gone down by $11 billion in question period. This will be useful for him if he's writing his QP questions. And I would now like to talk about the Canada Wealth Fund, the Canada Strong Fund. It will help us build our country. Instead of criticizing us and heckling us, the Conservatives should join us to build a strong Canada, a Canada that works for us all. We are proud of what we've done, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Once again, we see nothing to develop renewable energy or clean energy or public transit. Yet we do see new subsidies for oil and gas. The government has even dared to invest more in carbon capture so that oil companies can take more oil out of the tar sands. They're setting aside $14.5 billion for oil and gas in this document. They're talking about ramping up oil transportation capacity by 12% through a pipeline that will cost $640 billion. They're putting $25 billion in a wealth fund, even more for oil and gas. How can this government claim to take climate change and its climate goals seriously when the Honourable Minister of Finance? Mr. Speaker, my colleague has read the document, but only a part of it. I do get it. It's a long document, but I will go into a little bit more detail. We are investing in major projects like the expansion of the Port of Montreal in Contrecoeur. This will be the largest port expansion in Canada's history. Quebec is a trade leader. Quebec is an entrepreneurship leader. We will continue to invest in our entrepreneurs and our industries to build Canada strong from coast to coast.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
First, I would like to congratulate the Honourable Minister for his speech. I would thank him for simplifying the disability tax credit. As a father, I appreciate that, and I'm ready to work with him to make the system simpler so that it can help more people. I filled out tax forms and I understand how difficult they can be, so it's a good idea. However, today, Mr. Speaker, we learn that this Liberal Prime Minister has just doubled the deficit left behind by Justin Trudeau from $31 billion to $65 billion. No one even thought it would be possible to spend more money than Justin Trudeau, but this Prime Minister managed it. This is a credit card budget. It will lead to more costs, higher taxes, more debt, and more charges on the national credit card. This Prime Minister is just another Liberal. Today, the Liberal Prime Minister patted himself on the back for an 11th credit card budget. He told Canadians that the cost of living has never been so low. But let's turn away from these Liberal illusions and look at the reality being faced by everyday Canadians. Our country has the worst food inflation in the G7. In Quebec, the situation is particularly serious for seniors. According to the Journal de Montréal, Mr. Speaker, 1/3 of Quebec seniors earn less than $25,000 a year. Some have to choose between rent, groceries, and prescription medication. One retired individual was quoted by saying, "I almost ended up in the streets." Rents are skyrocketing, and many seniors are living on less than $1,900 a month. They're having to skip meals. We see stories like this all throughout Canada. The Liberals' credit card budget has led to more inflation, higher prices, and a future of high taxes, all while Liberal insiders continue to rake it in through corporate welfare and subsidies. That's what we see in the Liberal economic update. More spending, more costs, more taxes, more charges on the national credit card. This Prime Minister is just another Liberal. The Prime Minister has broken his promise to reduce the debt-to-GDP ratio. It is set to increase for 4 years straight. The Prime Minister also broke his promise to spend less. Spending this year has gone up by 5%, beyond what Justin Trudeau projected. Just today, the Prime Minister announced $37 billion of new spending. And here we're talking about net spending. This completely dwarfs any savings he has achieved. Since coming into office, the Prime Minister has created 13 new government agencies, burdening our democracy further. His deficit is the largest we have seen outside of COVID, and interest payments on the debt, expressed as a percentage of GDP, are the largest we have seen since 1996. Interest payments on the debt are now $59 billion a year, more than what is spent on health, more than what the government takes in through the GST. This means that when you pay the GST, every single cent you are paying vanishes into the pocket of bankers. Not a single cent goes to our doctors or nurses, Mr. Speaker. Every Canadian this year will pay $3,400 just to service the debt, with getting nothing in return on services. And a significant portion of government spending is vanishing into the pockets of Liberal cronies. The government has just announced a sovereign wealth fund with no wealth to fund it. It's a boondoggle, Mr. Speaker. And the money that goes into this fund will also be charged to the government credit card. Liberal insiders will make a killing on this. There are other measures to favor the global elites. $3 billion for climate spending. This is the same excuse that the Prime Minister used to enrich Brookfield. Let us think about his Net Zero Alliance, which is currently going bankrupt. He is spending on electric vehicles built abroad at the expense of Canadian jobs. $11 billion for a great big conference of global elites who will get together and talk about how best they can squander away taxpayer money. And the update is also predicting increased inflation and decreased growth, all while the government is doing all it can to increase the cost of living and reduce wages, all while Liberal insiders rake it in. Over the past year, quality of life has been on the decline, costs have been going up. I would invite these Liberals to open their eyes and wake up to reality. They should propose a plan to reverse course. Conservatives have proposed a plan with 4 pillars. First, abundant, affordable energy with no tax on gasoline and no carbon taxes. 2, low inflation and low taxes achieved by cutting bureaucracy, corporate welfare, and other types of waste. 3, free trade competition. And 4, national autonomy. We need to unblock our natural resources so we can drive our economy using what we have here at home. This is how we can make things more affordable. This is how we can make Canada stronger. And this is how we can make Canada greater.
I want to congratulate, now in English, congratulate the Minister for his speech and thank him for his commitment as a father. Thank him for his commitment to simplify the disability tax credit. Our people should be spending their times living their lives rather than filling out forms. We want to make life simpler for people who already have enough. Unfortunately, then comes the bad news. This Liberal Prime Minister has now doubled the deficit that Justin Trudeau left behind, from $31 billion to $65 billion. Everyone thought it would be impossible to outspend the reckless Justin Trudeau, but then this new Liberal Prime Minister came along and said, "Hold my champagne, Mr. Speaker." On this day, as the Prime Minister congratulates himself for putting an 11th Liberal budget on the national credit card and tells Canadians that affordability is the best it's been in a decade, let us remember that his illusions are not reality. With Canada's food prices rising the fastest in the G7, just last week in Calgary, on April 25th, thousands of families lined up for hours at the Guru Nanak Free Kitchen. Many with suitcases, Mr. Speaker, so that they could take away 80,000 pounds of free potatoes and groceries because they cannot afford to feed themselves. In Moose Jaw, the food bank has had to limit visits to once a month instead of 2. I don't know what people are doing for the rest of the year. 150% increase in the demand at that local food bank under this Liberal government. Nationwide, food banks are recording nearly 2.2 million visits per month. That's double from 7 years ago. Working parents are skipping meals so their children can eat. Seniors are choosing between groceries and medication. Young families are staring down mortgage increases as inflationary government spending drives up their mortgage costs. And all of this, Mr. Speaker, is leading to real misery in people's lives, real human costs that we saw with the report of the World Happiness Index, which saw Canada fall from 5th happiest in the world to 25th during the span of this Liberal government. Among Canadians under the age of 25, we now rank 71st behind the US, UK, Australia, and even Kazakhstan, Vietnam, and Moldova. Wow. Who would have thought that Kazakhstani youth, Vietnamese youth, Moldovan youth would be happier than Canadians in their youth in the springtime of their lives, Mr. Speaker? That is the tragedy of Liberal credit card budgeting that impose higher costs on people's lives. Here's how it works. They put the nation's bill on the national credit card, and they force Canadians to put their bills on their personal credit cards. Meanwhile, a small group of Liberal elites and corporate insiders get fantastically rich off government handouts, bailouts, and carve-outs. Today's Liberal fiscal updates brings more costs, more debt, and more bills on the national credit card. This Prime Minister is just another Liberal. Here are the facts. Here are the facts. He doubled the deficit from $31 billion to $65 billion. Prime Minister broke his promise that he would reduce the debt-to-GDP ratio over the fiscal horizon. Today, he reported the debt-to-GDP ratio will go up, not only over the fiscal horizon, but in every single year that this government serves. He broke his promise to spend less, with spending year over year going up 4.9%, which is far more than the combined inflation and economic growth, and about twice inflation plus population growth. He's added $37 billion of brand new spending measures in this economic update alone, on top of tens of billions of dollars already announced in the last year. Since taking office a year ago, this Liberal Prime Minister has created 13 new government agencies. Outside of COVID, last year's was the largest deficit in Canadian history, and this year's spending is the highest as a share of GDP since 1996. Interest on the national debt will hit $59 billion this year, more than we transfer for health care and more than we collect in GST. That means every penny you pay, Speaker, in GST goes to bankers and bondholders, not to doctors and nurses. Wow. Shame, Mr. Speaker. Every Canadian will spend $3,400 on interest payments. An increasing share of spending goes to Liberal elites and corporate insiders, so not everyone is hurting. The Prime Minister's so-called Sovereign Wealth Fund, which has no wealth to put in it, is relying 100% on the national credit card. And today we learned that they're going to spend millions of dollars to set up a transition office that will eventually set up a permanent office, to borrow on the national credit card to place bets on Liberal-chosen corporations. Then there's $3 billion for international climate finance, the same money scheme this Prime Minister used to enrich himself at Brookfield and through his now bankrupt Net Zero Alliance. I see someone over there from Brookfield was applauding. It was the former Environment Minister, and guess what? He might feel like he's out of business sitting in the corner, but no worries, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's Net Zero Alliance is also bankrupt, so he's not alone. Has been wrong about everything, by the way. Everything. He tells us every day how smart he is. He was wrong to say we needed a bigger and broader carbon tax, wrong to oppose the pipeline to the Pacific, wrong to say there would be deflation after COVID, wrong to say that printing money wouldn't cause prices to go up, wrong to say we should keep 50% of our oil in the ground, Mr. Speaker. How can we ever expect him to get anything right when he's been so wrong for so long? And there's $11 million to hold a summit. One meeting with a bunch of global financial elites will cost $11 million. And in case you're worried that this is something new, Justin Trudeau held the same meeting with the same people at the Shangri-La Hotel 10 years ago to set up the infrastructure bank. And how did that work out, Mr. Speaker? Under this Prime Minister, Canada now has the highest household debt in the G7, the most unaffordable housing in the G7, the lowest investment per worker in the G7, the second worst productivity, and the second highest unemployment in the G7. $500 billion of net investment has fled to the United States. Twice as much capital has left than has returned. Twice as many Canadians are starting businesses abroad than they are at home. In fact, more Canadian firms opened in the U.S. than opened in Canada last year. Last week's Liberal convention had a solution for all these people and this money leaving. They said they want an exit tax, Mr. Speaker, a gigantic wall of taxes to prevent people from fleeing the costly policies of this Prime Minister. Any country that punishes its citizens for fleeing has lost its hope. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business reports that after 1 year of this Liberal Prime Minister, more businesses closed than opened. That we face an entrepreneurial drought, that high costs, red tape, and uncertainty are crushing the next generation. Closures have outpaced startups for 6 straight quarters. Over half of small businesses told a survey they would not recommend someone start a business in Canada today. Canada's economic foundations, the CFIB concludes, are cracking. We cannot regulate and tax ambition out of our economy and expect to build a strong country, Mr. Speaker. Nothing has changed. Everything costs more. No real tax reform other than the rebranding of the carbon tax to be called the Clean Fuel Standard. He promised to cut red tape, and yet not one anti-development law has been removed. And as I said, 13 new agencies have been created. He said he would build at speeds not seen in generations, yet after we gave him unprecedented legal powers to approve big national projects, that new office that those laws created has not approved a single one. And then there's the pipeline to the Pacific, he promised. Mr. Speaker, it has no permit, no route, no investor, no start date, no end date, no starting point, no end point. And the only company that says that we know could actually build the pipeline, Enbridge, says that Liberal laws and taxes will prevent us from creating enough oil, generating enough oil to put in it. And finally, he wants Alberta to spend $20 billion on a money-losing carbon capture project that has never been proven anywhere as a condition for building the actual pipeline. And what about his famous Davos speech on middle power alliances? It's produced a lot of MOUs, but zero new free trade agreements around the world. Announcements are not results. Lofty speeches do not pay mortgages, fill tanks, or stock the shelves. At the root, this Prime Minister still holds the same liberal ideology of top-down government control that concentrates power and money among insiders like him. That philosophy that doubled our debt, killed growth, and priced families out of the basics. He has been wrong on all of those issues all along, Mr. Speaker. After 1 year of this Prime Minister, our economy is weaker, more expensive, and less hopeful. I share these harsh facts because we must replace the illusion with reality if we are going to fix what the Liberals broke. Mr. Speaker, it has been said that optimism without realism is delusion, and realism without optimism is surrender. We will neither delude ourselves about the harsh reality nor surrender to Liberal failure. Today, we speak as Conservatives of a different, more hopeful, and a better Canada. A Canada that is the most affordable and autonomous anywhere on earth. Everything in Canada should be dirt cheap because we have the most dirt in which to build homes, dig resources, and grow food, Mr. Speaker. We hold the most resources per person of any country in the history of the world. A home with a yard, heat in the winter, and fuel in the tank should be easily affordable. With vast farmland, cost of food should not even be a concern. We should be able to afford everything we want in this wonderful, splendid country and all of the abundant bounty that we have been given. That is our birthright, and it is our potential. Our mission, affordable, autonomous, strong country, is realistic. We possess the third most uranium, the most hydro potential, the cheapest natural gas to produce affordable, abundant electricity. We have the most oil reserves anywhere in the G7 and the shortest shipping distances from the Americas to both Asia and Europe. We have the most land per person of any G7 country by far on which to build homes. We rank third globally in farmland per person. We should have the most affordable food. Conservatives choose a big, open, free market economy where everyone can fulfill their potential, where our money is sound, where it buys more, and where the people are thoroughly in charge of their own lives. Mr. Speaker, our plan rests on 4 principles. 1, affordable, abundant energy. 2, low inflation and taxes by cutting the cost of government. 3, free market competition. And 4, national self-reliance. Energy touches every aspect of our lives. Conservatives therefore propose to scrap all taxes for all of the year on gas and to get rid of all carbon taxes forever. Workers and farmers will pay less. Truckers will deliver our goods more affordably. But we also need strong money. Strong money rewards work and savings, like Switzerland. We will balance budgets in the medium term by slashing spending on consultants, bureaucrats, corporate welfare, foreign aid, and false refugee handouts. We'll cancel the $90 billion wasteful Alto Rail and enforce a strict dollar-for-dollar rule. Every new dollar of spending will be matched with a dollar of savings to pay for it. We will unlock and unblock the free enterprise system. We'll end corporate welfare, cut taxes, end taxes on home building, energy, reinvestment, and lower taxes on work by simplifying and lowering the rates in our Income Tax Act. We will unblock home building and resource extraction by eliminating delays. And, Mr. Speaker, we will do all of this because we believe in an economy that serves the hardworking people of this country. The choice is clear. We can have an economy of lobbyists and handouts or hard work and competition, political aristocracy or economic meritocracy. I choose meritocracy, Mr. Speaker. And the final principle, of course, is autonomy. Our Canadian Sovereignty Act will bring home paychecks and production through free enterprise and not subsidies. We will repeal the anti-development law C-69, lift the Northern BC oil shipping ban, scrap the industrial carbon tax, cut regulatory burdens by 25% in 2 years, bring in a 2-for-1 rule. Every new regulation must eliminate 2 old ones. We will move to the world's fastest permitting, and we will bring in binding pre-permits so that we can get projects moving quickly and our economy rolling. And we will unblock a dozen LNG plants, create a strategic energy and mineral reserve for crises and for leverage, and we will use that leverage to fight for tariff-free trade with the United States. That means building up our leverage to end the needless tariffs on our steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. Pushing a new auto pact will also allow us to work with our American friends to increase production on both sides of the borders. We will seek to relaunch the Keystone Pipeline to move hundreds of thousands of additional barrels of oil south of the border, and we will not seek a permanent rupture with our closest customer in favor of a strategic partnership for a new world order with the dictatorship in Beijing, a regime that the Prime Minister admitted. Canada sells 20 times more to the United States than it does to China, and that is not going to fundamentally change, no matter how many illusions and falsehoods the Prime Minister promises. The same Prime Minister knows that. That's why he has 91% of his investments in the United States and not in Canada. Unfortunately, under his leadership, his investments are among those that have fled. In short, we need to remove the obstacles, the tariffs, the taxes, the red tape, and the bureaucracy. Other government obstacles need to be removed. In essence, we need the government to get out of the way. It's not what they must do, it's what they must stop doing. As Saint-Exupéry, the famous French author, said, perfection is not achieved when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to remove. Removing liberal burdens, liberal taxes, liberal red tape, we will liberate the Canadian people to fulfill their potential. By lifting 11 years of liberal burdens, we can free Canadian energy, genius, and ambition. There is a Canada in the hearts of every immigrant and pioneer, every Indigenous person whose lineage dates back to time immemorial. And it is this, that with freedom we can achieve anything, that our promise is not a memory, it is our destiny. Imagine a young tradesperson able to afford the homes that he builds, a mother filling her grocery cart worry-free, making decisions about her children's nutrition and not worried about emptying her bank account. Families breathing freely, entrepreneurs launching ideas the same day they invent them. Our resources coming out of the ground and enriching all of our people, not foreign coffers. No limits exist on the potential of the Canadian people when they are free to pursue them. We must be realistic and optimistic, because a realist counts the odds while an optimist changes them. Let's do both. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where I agree with the leader of the Conservative Party is to look at the contrast. And there is a great big difference. On the one hand, you have a Prime Minister elected 1 year ago today and a government that recognizes that in order to grow the economy, in order to protect our security into the future, we need to invest in Canada. We need to invest in our infrastructure, invest in our people, Mr. Speaker. From day one, those are the types of actions that we have witnessed. In the fall budget, we saw it detailed. In the spring update that was just tabled an hour ago, full of good news. The Conservative Party has nothing new to add, Mr. Speaker. And it is unfortunate. I think the bar should be set higher for the official opposition, quite frankly. And let's recognize that if you want to build a strong and healthy country, you have to be able to invest in people, invest in the country. And the question...
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's been rattling on about the same thing for the last 10 years. And what has been the result of this Liberal government? They doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, doubled food bank lineups, gave us the worst growth in the G7, and now with the worst food price inflation in the G7. And we've seen the results. Every time they use the word invest, what they mean is to add more debt. Today, we got more costs, more debt, more taxes, and more on the national credit card. Well, what we needed, it's not a credit card economy, we need a paycheck economy. An economy where hard work brings home a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food and homes in safe neighborhoods. That's the promise of Canada we will restore.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Official Opposition often talks about cooperative affairs. I would like to hear about extra oil and gas investments or subsidies in this update. $14.5 billion for sequestration, for carbon sequestration. But they are broadening that credit to allow to produce more oil. It's a direct subsidy to oil production. There's an accelerated capital cost allowance for liquefied natural gas projects, $640 million more. On top of this, there's a $25 billion sovereign fund that the government is implementing that will fund big projects in any business that has already gotten money from the government, like the Trans Mountain Pipeline. If they want to extend, they can get money from the sovereign fund. What does the official opposition think about these cooperative actions? Is it acceptable or unacceptable when it goes to oil and gas? The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. It's an easy question. The oil sector does not need this. It is very lucrative if we allow companies to act. The issue isn't a lack of money. The product they have is precious. The issue, however, is that there are governmental hurdles that stop these businesses from actually producing the oil and gas. So let us give permits for pipelines and new projects in 6 months or less. Let us eliminate the carbon tax on industry. And let's allow oil companies to pay more to help fund the health of all Canadians, including Quebecers. But we don't need cooperative actions. The government needs to step aside. The Liberals want to tax, block, and then subsidize companies. What we want to do is to just free our investors' potential, our workers' potential, so they can work in a free market.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a contradiction today. We have a Liberal government that is celebrating bigger deficits while Canadians continue to struggle under them, because Canadians are now staring down a $67 billion deficit that 2 years ago would have been unthinkable, because even under Justin Trudeau, the projection was half of that. And this, of course, is not even the full picture, because it does not include the $100 billion in submarines, the largest military procurement in our history. So my question for the member is simple. Does he ever think that the Liberals will balance the budget?
Here, here. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, of course, the budget's going to balance itself, right? You know, we make fun of Justin Trudeau, though, but how can we really continue doing that when the new Liberal Prime Minister has a deficit that is 100 times bigger? I mean, did you ever imagine that anyone could outspend Justin Trudeau? Anyone could be more irresponsible than Justin Trudeau? You know, you wonder, is it sheer incompetence, or is it because this Liberal Prime Minister and the elites around him actually profit off of all of the inflation and the handouts this creates? And remember, the CEO of Brookfield said that inflation drives profits for Brookfield. It means they can charge higher rent to working class tenants. It means their stock price goes up. It means their assets go up in price while destroying the working class people. At the same time, what is the money funding that the Prime Minister is putting on the national credit card? Corporate welfare, handouts to insiders. While they lock up all the other small businesses and entrepreneurs, they give special deals to Liberal insiders and powerful elites. That is the economy that they've created, Mr. Speaker, one for insiders and elites. We want an economy that is bottom-up, free enterprise for every Canadian who works hard, pays their taxes, and plays by the rules.
Here, here. Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, we know that right now people living with disabilities that actually can qualify get $200 for the Canada Disability Benefit. Despite that it's that meager, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals offered nothing in terms of an increase despite the high rates of inflation. Also, Mr. Speaker, we've talked to them and we brought forward ideas about improving the disability tax credit form, just honouring people who are living with disability in their province and territory that they would automatically qualify. What do the Liberals do? They tinker the form and they say good enough. But Mr. Speaker, it's costing 250,000 doctor hours a year and 1 million patient visits just to do that form. That red tape alone is a reason to actually just honour people who are living with disability in their provinces and territories. Through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Leader of the Official Opposition, does he support our proposal that you should, if you're on disability in your province and territory, you should automatically qualify? And do the Conservatives support increasing the Canada Disability Benefit for those people that are living with disabilities?
Excellent question.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
I think that's a great question. First of all, obviously if somebody's on disability, they should automatically qualify for the disability tax credit. I will note there are a lot of people who should also qualify but that are not receiving disability provincially. So it should not necessarily be the case in the reverse direction. The other thing that needs to be simplified is the disability savings account. I think what should happen is when somebody applies for the disability tax credit, they should be able to tick a box for CRA to contact their bank and alert them to set up free of charge a registered disability savings account, because it took us 2 trips to the bank and a stack of paper like this in order to do it. It took forever. I can't imagine a very busy single mother who's working as a waitress is going to be able to go twice to the bank, fill out all those forms, and as a result, 18 years later, her child is not going to have a savings account to help that child with their future. So let's make it automatic, let's make it simple, let's empower people's lives and not drown them in paperwork. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Nature. Mr. Speaker, it's curious to see the opposition against the economic update, especially when at every QP we hear how important it is to tackle the challenges faced by all Canadians, especially youth, when it comes to housing. However, in the budget and in the update, we want to build and implement a fund for strong communities, $51 billion. This is an amount that not only will allow us to help us with projects in communities, will also support infrastructure. Will they support this measure? It's an important one, and it's useful for all of Canada. I will hand the floor over to the Leader of the Official Opposition. There are so many funds and agencies and programs that the government has created to broaden state costs on the shoulder of Canadians. It's difficult to figure out which one she's talking about. Is it perhaps this sovereign fund? It's a fundless fund at the end of the day. Sovereign funds generally accumulate budget surpluses, like in Norway and Saudi Arabia. In Singapore, they have budget surpluses year on year, and so they put money aside, like one would save up some money to make their people more wealthy. But in Canada, there are no surpluses. There are deficits year after year after year. We have a debt that goes over $1 billion. This Prime Minister wants to crack out the credit card to invest in corporations linked to the government that have influence over the government. And now I'm sure that Canadians will lose the money and pay interest on the new debts added by the Prime Minister. And that's ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. For investments, we have to eliminate obstacles and taxes. We need a free economy here in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to colleagues for being here today. Well, listen, Mr. Speaker, it's not easy to have detailed thoughts about such an undetailed document, because the goal of an economic update is to update people. And, you know, the government changed the budgetary cycle. They tabled a budget last fall, a budget that they clearly weren't ready for. There were some measures that were incomplete. For example, there was the GST changes. This is a budget that hadn't tabled a budget right after the election, even though they'd spoken endlessly about the economic emergency. Now we have an update where we were hoping that manufacturers in Quebec and in Canada would be able to adapt to a situation that has changed. And what's changed? Well, it's when it comes to tariffs. We'll talk about trade agreements. We have a Prime Minister who said that he was the master negotiator, Mr. Speaker. And yet, so far today, not only do we not have an agreement with the United States, but there's no negotiations underway with the United States. When a partner such as Mexico, Mr. Speaker, point of order, the Honourable Member for Drummond. I was impressed with the Honourable Member, the Honourable Opposition Leader who kept his concentration when the Liberal benches emptied earlier. Now I hope we could get the same respect from the Conservatives as they leave. Thank you to the member for the point of order. And yes, obviously, members, I see them leaving the House. It would be good if the members who are leaving the House, who are having conversations, take those conversations out of the House into the lobbies where we can't hear them. The Honourable Member for Mirabel has the floor. Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague. What I was saying is that, the Minister of Finance says constantly the world is changing, the world has changed. And I'll tell you what's changed recently. About 2 weeks ago, the American president decided to sign a new decree which changes the way that tariffs are calculated for goods that are exported by Quebec and by Canada. Previously, 85% of our exports were in some way protected by CUSMA, and now today, many of our goods are tariffed at 25%. Even if those goods are technically covered by CUSMA. And that means that today, Mr. Speaker, there are about 50% of exports from Quebec and Ontario, and that's according to a study that came out of the University of Calgary recently. About half of our exports are affected by tariffs. And there are closures, Mr. Speaker. They've started. We saw a critical situation at BRP from the very beginning. South Shore Furniture Company has also closed. It's like cards that are just falling down. Now, our job as the opposition is to ask questions. And 2 weeks ago, we asked a question in question period. We asked the Prime Minister, what are you going to do with this new way of calculating tariffs from the Americans that means that we're not protected in our CUSMA bubble anymore? 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister didn't have even the slightest idea of what we were talking about, a question period. He was honest. He was frank. He said, listen, I'll get back to you on this. So we gave him a week. Last week, we asked a question period, and we asked the Prime Minister, what's he going to do? Because there are businesses that are starting to close. I see Liberal and Conservative colleagues, people here, from the Bloc Québécois. All of us who have industries in our ridings, we're getting messages from businesses that are facing challenges. And it's happened over the last 2-3 weeks. There are businesses, small and medium-sized businesses that have, full lines of credit. So we asked the Prime Minister, what's he going to do? And you know what he said? He said, wait for the economic update. There are going to be solutions in the economic update. And listen, I didn't sleep for a week. I've never been in so much suspense in my entire life, Mr. Speaker. I said, he's going to fix this problem. And then I read the economic update once. I read it twice, and I said, well, he can't have forgotten our businesses. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? Yeah, he forgot our businesses. He forgot our businesses. Our businesses that today, despite the fact that they're covered by CUSMA, are facing 25% tariffs. And we've asked, for salary help in the short term. And, they've put measures in place for training, and that's good for the labor force. That's maybe going to be helpful in other provinces. But in Quebec, training and labor force development, that's something that's been completely handed over to Quebec's jurisdiction. And, we have a strategy for for training in Quebec. We have sectoral programs for the labor market in Quebec. And if you want to train workers quickly, for jobs that are good jobs today, you have to spend money. You have to give the money to Quebec. And I know that they're allergic to doing that, Mr. Speaker, to giving money to Quebec. They like to interfere in Quebec's jurisdiction. You know, the health minister, I like her, but her department doesn't want to just, give us our money. You know, how often do the Liberals not even know what we're talking about when we talk about Quebec's programs? So there's nothing in here for businesses. And the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that the United States are going to remain our main trading partner. They're going to be our main trading partner for a long time. And it's true for small businesses that are affected by these tariffs. Because, for big businesses, for example, like aluminum businesses, they have the industrial capacity to redirect their exports sometimes fairly quickly to other markets, even if it's not ideal for them. But when it comes to our small, medium-sized businesses, like the businesses you see on Curie-Labelle Street in Mirabel, among others, all of their infrastructure, all of their technical and bureaucratic expertise exists for exports to the United States, and they don't have the means to shift so rapidly. And, my colleague earlier was talking earlier about corporate welfare to the oil and gas sector. We're not talking about the oil and gas sector. We're not talking about the big banks. These are businesses that don't have high-powered lobbyists talking to government. They've been forgotten. In the economic update, we see that the government is bragging about having a great economic record. Mr. Speaker, they say that exports to the United States have dropped by 10%, which is dramatic, for a partner that represents 80% of our exports when we're a small, open economy. And they're saying that exports to countries that aren't the United States have gone up by 30 or 40%. And that's good news, Mr. Speaker, particularly given that there's not one country in all those countries where the Prime Minister has signed a new trade agreement, huh? We're looking for new export markets, and they say the Prime Minister's traveled, he's burned up jet fuel, he's gone around the country, he's signed agreed, but there's not a single country to which we've increased our exports where a new trade agreement has been signed. Where has trade gone up? Well, it's oil and gas to Europe, oil and gas to Asia, gas to Europe, gas to Asia. So do you know who's benefited from this record? Well, it's the increases in aluminum exports to Europe, because our aluminum producers have sent their product to Europe because the Prime Minister wasn't able to fix the problem with the United States. And that's what they're hiding here. And now they're saying that, the deficit isn't as bad as expected, Mr. Speaker. That's the other bit of good news from the Finance Minister. And it's true. It's true. There's $11.5 billion less deficit spending than expected because the banks have lowered their growth forecasts for the coming years. But now this is the deficit from last year. There's more growth, and that's true. We recognize it. Yep. There's been more inflation. The increase in prices is generating revenue for the government. But 2/3 of that amount of money that the minister is referring to, where is it from? Well, it's tax credits for batteries, tax credits for green energy that weren't claimed because there wasn't enough investment. When the finance minister says that he's, Mr. Investment, do you know what the rest of the money is? Or where the rest of that budget deficit reduction has come from? Well, it's the disaster relief fund. Because, maybe the finance minister hasn't done enough rain dances, but there haven't been as many floods and forest fires so far this year. So we've saved money in disaster funding. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to refocus. We need to refocus on the real programs. And yet the government here, and listen, if you look at the new content in here, there's not much. I can show you the document that's been tabled. There's not much. But there are some measures that are good that have already been announced. When the government does things that are good, we can recognize that. A national strategy for defense, national strategy for automotive sector, national strategy for infrastructure, a national strategy for critical minerals, and we've added in C-15 phosphate, which was forgotten by the government. They had the spirit of the presence of mind to accept that. The nature strategy, Mr. Speaker. But what's missing is a national strategy on what, Mr. Speaker? A national strategy for aerospace. There isn't one. 2 or 3 decades now, the entire industry, and everyone who knows this really well, those who are building airplanes, those who are building helicopters, those who are building parts for those, they're in my riding, they're, I can walk to them from my riding. They're also, all around Montreal. They're asking for a national strategy. Why? So that projects can be developed along with what the government needs with its defense strategy, because it's a long cycle, a long-term industry, so that we can order things. So what they want is a strategy. They don't want press conferences, and that's what the Liberals are doing. And, there are unions who've met with Liberal members who speak to them about this, and what they hear is that, listen, it would be pretty bad for the aerospace sector in Winnipeg if there was a national strategy that was focused on Quebec. That's what unions are being told by Liberal members. And, the Minister of Finance, I listened to him earlier. I listened to him very closely. It's not always easy, but I listened to him very closely. And the Minister of Finance said, I'd like for the Bloc, to be, on our side for once. They're so partisan, the Bloc Québécois. They're really difficult. They're closed off, Mr. Speaker. Well, listen, no, we can play that game too, Mr. Speaker. It goes both ways. The idea of making structural proposals for our industry, why should we be there to, pat them on the back when they're not listening to our proposals? I'll tell you why there's no aerospace strategy. It's because, what happens in the automotive sector in Ontario, there's a lot of problems there right now, structural problems. These are major problems. And we know that the government ideally wants to displace part of that industry in part towards to Ontario. I don't know if that's true, but it's what you hear. And maybe that's why there's no national strategy. And so that's what's missing in the economic update. That's what people on the ground are calling for, and that's what we're not finding in, these bricks from Ottawa here. The finance minister was saying that, we have to vote alongside him. Now, every time that there's a budget, every time that there's an economic update, we make costed requests. They are self-funding. They're requests over 5 years. So even if we know that we're never going to govern, I can promise you that I, renew my... we all know here in the Bloc Québécois, we put together some of the very best, budgets, one of the best costed plans every election, even if we know we're never going to govern. Now, listen, here they're talking about $10 billion a year. Imagine how many school food programs you could fund with $10 billion a year. I see the minister over there. Instead of giving money to the oil and gas sector, who we can say, listen, they're having no problems making ends meet. Never have we got a request or an answer to our request, Mr. Speaker, and it's something that would be in the public interest. Putting back in place the tax on digital services. Over 5 years, that's $7.5 billion. And across the way, across on the other side, they're saying that, oh, listen, we did this for the good of Canada. I'll quote the government, which said not so long ago, we will never accept that we're paying a price to negotiate with the Americans. And they said, we're proud, we're going to build Canada strong. Listen, we know they're building a Canada strong. We're getting a little bit sick of hearing it. But we don't know when we're going to get it, this Canada strong that they keep saying they're building. And they keep saying, listen, we are not going to make any concessions before we start negotiations with the Americans. They've said that. But what's the first thing that the Prime Minister did when he came to power? It was to make concessions. He kneeled down before the Trump administration. He says he wants to build a Canada strong. He says he wants us to stand up on our own 2 feet. The government wants to show that it's not, paying a price to negotiation. Well, if they want to show that, they could put the tax on digital services back. They want it on the other side of the House, Mr. Speaker. They want to be proud Canadians. Well, you know what? Act like proud Canadians. But no. In the meantime, our media are unable to make ends meet, Mr. Speaker. And talking about media, because there's a crisis in the media sector right now. And, the minister at page 121, this is a good page. This is a really good page. I liked this page a lot. The minister says that journalism is essential for democracy and for our social fabric. It's essential, radio and television journalism. It's there on the page. And, I like the finance minister. He's a revolutionary. He's somebody, he's a revolutionary, Mr. Speaker. He says the government announces its intention to speak to Canadians and stakeholders about the possibility of increasing the tax credit for labour in the journalism sector in Canada. That's a revolution, Mr. Speaker. If the finance minister had been there during the French Revolution, he would have put a stand in front of the Bastille and he would have done a survey on the price of cake, Mr. Speaker. And, today we'd have, King Louis XV, Mr. Speaker. That's where we'd be. That's what... that's an example of not acting for Quebec. If you want concrete examples, that's a great one. We asked for emergency salary help for businesses. Businesses say, listen, we need to maintain our jobs. There are businesses that are productive, that are able to export in a context of a free trade context, and in a context where the Prime Minister says, listen, we're going to end up with an agreement. Well, for those people, the solution isn't to send their labor force back to school, Mr. Speaker. The solution is to make sure that they can lower the cost of production for those businesses with subsidies for salaries, so that, we can help with the tariff shock to make sure that, businesses in our regions don't shut down. But they're saying no. And I'm wondering why, because this is a good solution. And we've, asked the minister, and maybe they're waiting for Kiram to be ready so that they can get that money out. Because, for Kiram, they've got money. But when it comes to subsidies for salaries, they don't have any money for that. EI, Mr. Speaker, that's to help people get through crisis situations. And right now we're in a crisis situation. The minister has said it. The world has changed. We're in a crisis. The unemployment rate is a little bit better than what we would have thought. We're expecting worse. But there are still people out of work, and we need EI regime that covers more than half of workers. And, it's only about half of Canadian workers that are covered by EI. Nobody here in this House would be able to renew their mortgage if they told their lender that there was only a 1 in 2 chance that they would be covered with unemployment insurance. But for Canadian workers, that's what they're facing. We asked for temporary measures. They've been put in place. It was so necessary that they put them back in place. And you know what? I don't know how many, for how many years now there have been pilot projects in rural areas, pilot projects that have become, semi-permanent, Mr. Speaker. And that's a demonstration that we need a reform of EI. It's so clear. The $814 million, the minister, the $814 million that's going to go to Quebec. Listen, I read the Prime Minister's book. It's in my library at home. It says values. The Prime Minister, before he got into politics, he talked about his values and how values are more important than markets, and that the market economy and capitalism without values, that just makes us, a society without any direction. And you know what? He's just thrown that away. Where are the values now, Mr. Speaker? They decided to pay Canadians back for, a carbon tax, but Canadians were paid back before they paid into it. So in 7 provinces, they decided to pay back money that was never paid to the government to buy votes. That was in the last election. But Quebecers, we paid into that. And the parliamentary budget officer said, and bureaucrats at the finance department said this in committee. They said, they told us, the public servants, that $814 million is owed to Quebec. Where's that $814 million? It's everywhere except in Quebec, Mr. Speaker. It seems like this would be a good step in the right direction. The health transfers. No increase in the health transfers. And, the minister was happy. He was ready to have a $90 billion deficit. But, we've asked for health transfer increases. We see the need for it in our hospitals. We know that the costs for the systems are going up by 6% a year in a context where the population is getting older. And, no government has ever put in place or applied as many programs, based on federal power to spend than the Trudeau government. Those were choices that they made. But meanwhile, people are on beds in hallways in hospitals, and they're not fixing it. Is the only source of funding federal funding? No, but it's a big part of the funding for our hospitals, and it's part of the solutions. And we know that there will be cuts as of the next fiscal year coming up. And there's nothing on that in this update, Mr. Speaker. SRG, they talked about the cost of living. There's nothing for the cost of living in here. They've increased their grocery benefit. That's good. and that they've based that on the GST return, tax returns, which takes into account whether people get other family benefits, etc. That's good. But seniors, Mr. Speaker, for the government, well, there are still good and bad seniors. So far, the legal age for retirement in Canada, unless it's changed and nobody said, it's 65 years.
But the government thinks there's two classes of seniors, the good ones and the bad ones. People over 75 saw a 10% increase to OAS, and people 65 to 74 were told, go away and wait 10 years to get your full old age security amount. The government is discriminating against certain classes of seniors. The government wants to help people with the cost of living. Well, there's the missing link. There's the category that they're leaving out. And there's nothing in that in this document. The finance minister has said, be nice, lay down your partisan arms, join us, and let us all work together to take care of our seniors. Come on. A top-up for the public transit fund. We have a public transit issue in Canada, and Canada needs to invest in its infrastructure. Without that, we can have no growth, let alone green or sustainable growth. They first cut the fund and then took half of what was left and handed it over to Ontario. Of course, transit is an area of Quebec jurisdiction, so there was a tug of war between the two orders of government. But there's nothing on this in this document. I look forward to seeing what they come up with. It's frustrating, though. Guaranteed loans to the forestry sector, loan guarantees, because all too often these companies have to pay countervailing and anti-dumping duties in the United States. They're going to get that money back after Canada wins in the court, but in the meantime, they lose that money. They have nothing in their coffers. The forestry sector needs help, and who's helping them? The minister seems to think that the world has changed while things that are all the same in the forestry sector. Quebec also needs reimbursement for asylum seekers. Is that partisan? There's plenty of people in Quebec's National Assembly, all of whom have called for a reimbursement. And then on top of this, the government is closing down agricultural research hubs in Quebec. In the minister's own riding, he's closing down an agricultural processing research hub. How much money does it cost to pay all the researchers at the centre? $28 million over 5 years. That is a drop in the bucket when you look at the entire federal budget. And yet they're cutting it all the same. I don't get it, Mr. Speaker. And they call us partisan. I don't know what to think about a fiscal update like this, because yes, people need help. Yes, the government needs to get money to the people. Yes, action needs to be taken. And what do they propose? Oh, a sovereign wealth fund. That's the big announcement. A sovereign wealth fund with all sorts of fanfare in Montreal. They go out, they announce it, they take no questions, and they said, oh, but tomorrow you'll get the details in the spring economic update. So we opened the spring economic update, and you look it up, and it says news will be announced in the next few months. No details. So we've only learned one thing about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is that the projects it will finance will be approved by the Major Projects Office. So yes, the fund will be independent, but the only thing it will be independent to do is to say yes to the Prime Minister. We've asked questions. We've asked, will there be an independent investment panel? And they said, who knows, maybe it'll be kind of independent, who knows. Honestly, they have no idea what this will cost. They have no idea how they will fill up the fund. They have no idea how it will be governed. They haven't even considered how much private investment it will draw in. The initial endowment will be $25 billion, but as for the private sector, who knows? And they want us to lay down our partisan arms and come join them. But these are not partisan questions. These are legitimate questions. We are talking about a fund that it looks like the Prime Minister's office will be the one controlling because, of course, it's the PMO that manages the Major Projects Office. and they've talked about how for people investing in the fund, there will be no risk. That money will pay returns. But major projects are risky. So someone will end up holding the bag if things go awry. But who will that be? The government has compared us to Norway and their sovereign wealth fund. They set up the sovereign fund to counter the Dutch disease that was devastating their economy. Canada seems to be doing things completely differently. China has a sovereign wealth fund. There are wealth funds to do dealings on financial markets. Quebec even has a sovereign wealth fund, the Fonds des Générations, the Generations Fund. But there's a lot of reasons you can put a fund in place, but the minister has created a fund to get an announcement in front of the media. We don't understand the reasoning behind this. We don't know why he's proposed a fund like this. So we're asking questions because that's our job as opposition members. The job of the minister is to answer the questions, so we expect answers in short order. And then if you ask us, are we happy about the spring economic statement? The answer is no. I mean, it doesn't actually do anything. I know it's a big document with a lot of pages, and I knew it wasn't going to be a budget, but there's nothing in there. It's empty. I mean, you could have announced the deficit in just a few pages. And at any rate, things will change. I mean, the tariffs will change. The world economy is in a constant state of flux. At the end of the day, look, we get it. The Liberals are a majority. We still want to contribute to governance. We've always have been constructive. But it takes two to tango. And for us to propose our ideas, there needs to be someone on the other side who cares enough to recognize the fact that everyone on this side of the House was voted in by someone. And because of that, we deserve to be listened to. I think that the government should work on its listening ear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Questions and comments? The Honourable Secretary of State for Nature. I am truly honoured, Mr. Speaker, to be able to rise to ask a question to my colleague. I learned a little bit about politics from him. I also learned about how to skim a document. And I'm saddened, though, because there's some good stuff in this document. Some stuff that has already come up in the question and answer sessions. For example, the billions of dollars for forestry workers. I brought that up earlier when answering a question asked by the opposition leader. A fund for strong communities. There's important stuff in this document, things that are important to Quebecers. In my riding, people are really excited about what we're proposing, so I'm saddened that our colleague is overlooking the various measures that will benefit Quebecers in this budget. For example, support for local businesses. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. I would like to greet my colleague. In a former life, she worked closely with us. I always appreciate hearing from her. And I hope she will visit Mirabel one day because we have maple syrup that is actually 100% uncut maple syrup. It would be fun to share it with her. As for forestry workers, yes, there are measures in this document to train the workforce. And we have some critiques of that because we believe that Quebec already has a trained workforce, and it's just a matter of getting them jobs. We also think that Quebec can do this itself without the federal government stepping on our toes. There's a lack of cash flow. The forestry industry is facing challenges. We're hoping that the countervailing and anti-dumping duties will be able to be brought down to give people some breathing room. Questions and comments?
For Nanaimo, Lady Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my honourable colleague for his speech. He did an admirable job breaking down the Spring Economic Statement. Like the Bloc, Conservatives believe that the federal government should be more effective and smaller. We also believe it should focus on areas of federal jurisdiction and respect the jurisdiction of the provinces. The government has announced the creation of a new fund and is also trying to expand Ottawa's role in job training. The Bloc Québécois does the Bloc Québécois support this increased centralization, or does it believe that these decisions ought to remain decentralized so as to reflect local priorities? The honourable member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, just a month ago, this colleague did not even speak a word of French, and she's made great progress. It's fantastic that she's able to ask a question like this, so I would like to congratulate her. I thank her for the question. She was probably referring to the Sovereign Fund, and we know nothing about the Sovereign Fund. We just have no information at all, and it's hard to criticize something that we know nothing about. We do know that there will be a new structure where some Liberal insider will make millions managing it. I wonder why the government could not fund projects through the infrastructure bank or another existing structure. The Canada Infrastructure Bank has had its mandate changed a few times. And it looks like the finance minister is just trying to create an announcement to get in front of the media. The honourable member for Joliette-Manawan. First, I would like to commend my colleague from Mirabel for his excellent speech. Still on the Canada Strong Fund, which will have an endowment of $25 billion. If you look at the expenditures and revenues published in this document, you don't see that $25 billion figure. You need to go to page 147 in the French version to and under the heading non-budgetary operations, you see the an amount that is said to contain the $25 billion, though it's not broken down. If the $25 billion had been included, we would not have a reduced deficit. It would have, in fact, we would be seeing an increased deficit. We also see a lack of transparency for the various agencies like, for example, Build Canada Homes. We have a lack of transparency here in this House. I doubt that these agencies will be truly independent. What does my colleague have to say about this? The honourable member for Mirabel. If you look at page 147, you see that the government will be borrowing $25 billion and then handing it off to some agency where it will be hidden from parliamentary oversight. Meanwhile, taxpayers will be paying interest on the borrowed money year over year over year. So we ought to have information. What sort of bonds will be included in the fund? What will it cost? What will the details be? Unfortunately, we just don't have the answers. If you want to sell us a good idea, then work on us. Convince us it's a good idea. Give us the numbers. I get the sense that the minister just wanted to do an announcement, and he wanted to hide all the details of his plan.
Mr. Speaker, je remercie.
I would like to thank the member for Mirabel for his speech. I hope he doesn't get too rained on.
His thoughts on the fact that the Liberal government has put forward a spring economic update that will not allow us to meet our climate targets while putting billions in a sovereign wealth fund that lines the pockets of big oil corporations. And who is paying for it? The taxpayer and Indigenous peoples, while the Liberals backslide on Indigenous rights, as confirmed by Amnesty International. They are subsidizing their corporate dream through, they could actually, Mr. Speaker, subsidize their corporate dream through a windfall tax paid for by their corporate friends. But alas, that is not their plans. Sounds to me like they're all in it for their corporate buddies. And I was wondering through you, Mr. Speaker, if my honourable colleague could give his thoughts on that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mirabel. First, I don't want to offend my colleague. Kanesatake is in my riding. Regarding the environmental issues, the government talks about 11 new LNG projects. When the member for the Green Party supported the budget back in the fall, there were guarantees that, among other things, I don't remember what it was called, but there were going to be recovery mechanisms where CO2 would be put in the ground and buried, and in exchange, oil companies would be able to dig up more oil. We're seeing the government expanding tax credits, but what about the promise they made back in the fall? It looks like they're going back on their word now that they're a majority. So the funds for these recovery mechanisms, where will they go? We don't know. There's a lack of transparency here. Some money was given over to PSP Investments. It vanished into the void. We don't know what happened with that money. We have time for a quick question.
Honourable member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I listened carefully to his speech. He talked about health transfers briefly, and he also had quite a bit to say about debt service and the debt repayment. Like this $25 billion that's going to go into the Sovereign Wealth Fund will be borrowed and will be a charge to the taxpayer immediately, even if it doesn't appear, even if it's put onto a separate balance sheet. But in the years ahead, we see the increasing cost of debt service that will far exceed health transfers. Can you comment on debt service costs?
The honourable member for Mirabel, 25 seconds or less. The minister was boasting about a smaller than expected deficit, but in the projections, the deficits for the next 4 years are still the same. So he's patting himself on the back for one good year, but we still have 4 bad years ahead. The government still needs to tighten its belt, and there needs to be better financial management.
I have the honor to inform the House that a message has been received from the Senate informing the House that the Senate has passed the following bill to which the concurrence of the House is desired. Bill S-205, an act to amend the Corrections and Conditional Release Act.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat. The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to respond to the 2026 Spring Economic Update on behalf of Canada's New Democrats and our new leader, Avi Lewis. At the outset, I want to acknowledge that this update includes some positive measures that New Democrats agree with, and some, indeed, that we have long advocated for, including supporting apprenticeships in the skilled trades, delivering the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, standing up the Financial Crimes Agency to better go after white-collar criminals, and funding youth athletic programs. New Democrats will always work constructively with other parties and support measures that bring real benefits to working people in this country. However, taken as a whole, this update represents a missed opportunity to meet the moment, just as the budget in the fall did. In fact, there is almost nothing new in this update that has not already been announced. In classic neoliberal fashion, it naively assumes that the private sector can be relied upon to solve all the challenges we face. It doubles down on trickle-down economics by using taxpayer dollars to fund corporate welfare, an approach that has consistently failed to deliver benefits to working people wherever and whenever it has been applied. And it falls far short of responding to the reality that Canadians are living through, the everyday emergency of just trying to get by in a rigged economy. I want to underscore this. Across this country, people are being stretched, to the breaking point. Young Canadians are being locked out of opportunity, unable to find stable work in the communities where they live. Half of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck, one missed payment away from crisis. The cost of essentials, from groceries to rent, continues to soar, pushing families deeper into anxiety and uncertainty. At the same time, our public services are under persistent and growing strain, and our economy remains fundamentally tilted in favor of those at the very top. Beyond our borders, the world grows more unstable by the day. Donald Trump's trade war is a direct attack on Canadian workers and our industries. And his illegal war on Iran has destabilized the global economy. And critically, the Prime Minister and this Liberal government chose to support that war despite its foreseeable economic consequences for Canadians. Now, New Democrats recognize these are not small challenges. They demand bold, decisive action. They demand a government willing to stand up for people instead of deferring to the powerful. And yet, what we have before us is an economic update that tinkers at the margins when what Canadians need is transformative change. Modest relief is not enough when people are facing an affordability emergency. And make no mistake, this is an emergency. At kitchen tables across this country, Canadians are doing everything right. They're working hard. Some are juggling multiple jobs. Others are caring for children or aging parents. Many are sacrificing just to keep up. And yet, despite all that effort, they continue to fall behind. Why? It's not because Canadians aren't working hard enough. It's because the system isn't working for them. To understand why so many Canadians feel like they're falling behind, we have to confront a deeper truth. This is not just an affordability crisis. It is also an inequality crisis. In Canada today, the richest 1% hold as much wealth as the bottom 80% combined. That is the worst degree of inequality in generations in this country. Even more striking, Canada's richest 86 families hold as much wealth as the poorest 6.2 million Canadians. And while wealth at the top explodes, everyone else is being squeezed. That is why working harder is no longer enough. That is why people feel that the system is rigged, because in many ways it is. Corporate profits are soaring. Billionaire wealth is growing by the tens of billions. There are almost double the number of billionaires in Canada today than there were 20 years ago. But wages are not keeping up, costs are rising, and public services are being cut. This level of extreme inequality undermines social cohesion, weakens democracy, and makes it harder to solve every other challenge we face, from housing to healthcare to climate change, as public priorities are displaced by private interests. And yet, in this economic update by this Liberal government, there is really no serious plan to address these issues. There's no effort to rebalance the system, no willingness to ask those who have benefited the most to contribute more. It's no surprise, Mr. Speaker, in the economic projections that this government's relied on for this economic update, they've consulted a group of some 12 economists. Every single one of them works for a bank or the corporate sector. Not a single Labour economist was used to consult this government on the path ahead. Mr. Speaker, working Canadians are not asking for special treatment. They're asking for an economy where hard work is rewarded, where opportunity is real, and where prosperity is shared. And until we confront the growing concentration of wealth and power in this country, we will not solve the affordability crisis. Because at its core, that crisis is not just about high prices. It's about who our economy is built for and who it is leaving behind. Let's talk about one of the clearest examples of that imbalance, one that came up just last week: predatory pricing. Canadians know that prices are too high. You just have to walk down a grocery aisle to know that. They see it every time they go to the grocery store to pay rent or to fill up their gas tank. But what they may not know is that companies are increasingly using invasive data practices, tracking personal information to charge different prices to different people, often exploiting the most vulnerable, those that don't have the mobility to actually chase lower prices. This is called surveillance pricing. It means two Canadians can pay different prices for the exact same product, simply because an algorithm decides that one of them can be charged more and get away with it. That's not fair, it's not transparent, and it should not be legal. So the New Democratic Party called on this government last week to ban surveillance pricing and protect consumers from this kind of digital price gouging. But in this economic update, there is nothing. No action, no protection, not even any acknowledgement of the problem. Just a full-throated support and cheerleading for more AI. Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve a marketplace that is fair, that is competitive, not one that exploits them in increasingly sophisticated ways. Now let's turn to energy. Canadians are being crushed by the cost of living, and now gas prices are skyrocketing. But not everyone is suffering. Oil and gas companies are set to rake in an extra $90 billion in profits this year alone from Donald Trump's illegal war on Iran. Again, an illegal war that this government supported. And what was the government's response? A tax cut that oil companies can simply pocket, and no doubt will pocket to some degree, by raising prices. That is not relief, that is a gift to the oil and gas sector. It's also a Band-Aid, Mr. Speaker, because that reduction in the excise tax will last only until Labor Day. And we'll come back to this point in September and find out if gas prices are lower in September, because every reputable economist that I've looked at tells us that we're looking at persistent high oil prices for the foreseeable future beyond Labor Day. So instead of more corporate welfare, we should put a windfall tax on oil and gas giants and invest that money in projects that benefit working Canadians. Through this update, the Liberal government has announced plans to launch a sovereign wealth fund, the Canada Strong Fund, and they cited Norway as an example. Now, New Democrats have been calling for this approach for many years. Norway has a public oil company and invests the revenues in its sovereign wealth fund, now worth over $2 trillion. That's trillion with a T. And that they put that money to work for the public benefit, including building a renewable economy and investing in high-quality public services. However, what this update is proposing is the mirror image of what Norway has done. Norway built a public oil company, something that Conservatives dismantled under Brian Mulroney, and they took a fair share of the oil profits for the public. But instead of using private profits for the public benefit, as Norway did, the Liberals are proposing to use public money for the private profit of wealthy investors. The public takes on the risks, the private sector reaps the rewards. So New Democrats favor the concept of a sovereign wealth fund. We believe we have an opportunity to fund it properly for public benefit, like the Norwegians did. Start with an excess profits tax on the oil and gas sector. And now is a great time to do it, as Canadian oil companies stand to reap some $100 billion in excess profits this year alone. If you can't start now, Mr. Speaker, when can you start? But there's nothing in this update to ask the most profitable corporations to contribute their fair share towards Canada's economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, I would like to turn now to housing, because no discussion of affordability is complete without addressing the housing crisis. This is one of the clearest and most painful expressions of inequality that we see across our economy. Secure, decent, affordable housing is a foundational need for every Canadian. It anchors us in community, making participation in society, access to work, friends, and family possible. Yet, young people are giving up on ever owning a home. Renters are facing relentless increases in housing insecurity. Seniors are struggling to remain in their communities. Students are being priced out of the communities they grew up in, or they're forced into unsafe conditions or having to live with roommates well until their 30s. This is a national crisis, and it demands a response at the scale of a crisis. Now, in the last election, these Liberals made a clear promise. They said they would double Canada's rate of residential construction to reach 500,000 homes per year over the next decade. But a recent report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, maybe that's why this government was so quick to remove him, found that the government has not even laid out a plan to achieve that goal. And according to the same report, the government's flagship initiative, Build Canada Homes, will produce only about 26,000 homes by 2030. Mr. Speaker, that is nowhere near what is required. That is not a legitimate response to a housing crisis. At the very moment when Canadians need a surge in housing construction, federal housing spending is projected to fall over the coming years. Yes, fall. That is the opposite, I would suggest, of what this moment needs. For decades, successive governments, Liberal and Conservative alike, have stepped back from building non-market housing, the only way we are going to deliver truly affordable housing. And the result is clear. Canada now lags far behind peer countries in the supply of housing that is built for people, not for profit. Because New Democrats know, and I think Liberals and Conservatives refuse to acknowledge, that the market alone cannot fix this crisis. New Democrats say we need sustained federal leadership and long-term investment to dramatically scale up non-market housing. That's housing for co-ops, student housing, seniors housing, supportive housing for people living with disabilities, and housing for low-income Canadians. Housing is not just a commodity to be addressed by the market. It is a human right and a foundational need. Mr. Speaker, housing is the foundation of stable lives, strong communities, a fair economy, and a healthy country. And investing in housing is also smart economic policy. It creates good jobs, it supports local industries, and builds the infrastructure our community needs to grow. Once again, this economic update fails to rise to that challenge. Mr. Speaker, healthcare is another area where this government is failing to meet the moment. Canadians are deeply proud of our public healthcare system, and in fact, as we face threats from south of the border from Mr. Trump, I think having public healthcare is one of those strong national Canadian institutions that has helped bind us together and create Canadian pride in the face of that threat to our sovereignty. But our healthcare system, as we all know, is under strain. It's been facing staff shortages, long wait times, and growing privatization. And now, instead of strengthening it, this government, the Liberals, are stepping back. During the last election, this Prime Minister, and I would probably bet you every single person elected on the Liberal side of the House, promised Canadians that they would protect and expand pharmacare. The Prime Minister committed to signing agreements for free contraception and diabetes medications with all outstanding provinces and territories. In his words, quickly and equitably, end quote. Liberals insisted on calling it national pharmacare, when New Democrats, of course, meant public pharmacare. Yet, after being in power a year, the Liberals have signed not one agreement with a single province or territory, leaving only BC, Manitoba, PEI, and the Yukon Territory with deals in place. That isn't national. In fact, Newfoundland and Labrador's Health Minister just revealed that the federal government has now closed the door on negotiating a pharmacare program with their province, period. We hear the same thing from the government of Nova Scotia. Even more troubling, we've also recently learned from PEI's health minister that this Liberal government will allow existing agreements to expire in 2029, dismantling pharmacare before it is even fully realized. This economic update doesn't even include pharmacare in its list of affordability measures alongside dental care and other programs like childcare. This economic update claims that the government is protecting essential social programs, but that simply isn't true. The Liberals committed to national pharmacare, which the NDP forced to be delivered publicly. Betraying that pledge is politically immoral. It is a democratic offense, and Liberals ought to be ashamed of themselves. Speaking of politically immoral, this update provides no increase whatsoever to the Canadian Dental Care Plan. As we all know, costs go up every year, and the CDCP is no different. Any government truly committed to the long-term viability of dental care would ensure that both the income threshold to qualify and the fee guide to properly compensate oral health professionals went up at least by the rate of inflation. But the fact that the Liberals have ignored that completely, not adding a penny to the fee guide or to the income threshold, speaks volumes of their lack of commitment to this important public health initiative spearheaded by the NDP. You know, we all hear Liberals stand up in this place and in public claiming to take credit for dental care when we all know the NDP forced them to bring it in. But you know, as Joe Biden said, don't tell me your values, show me your budget, and I'll tell you your values. So I'll tell you, nothing speaks louder about this Liberal government's lack of commitment to dental care than the fact that they are allowing it to wither on the line and not properly funding it as soon as the New Democrats are not there to make them do it. If I might, there is also an issue of accuracy in budgeting and budget integrity raised by this update. This government is projecting a deficit difference of $11 billion from projections it made just 5 months ago. Despite a 2026 that is shaping up to be just as volatile, just as uncertain, just as affected by tariffs and Trump, and increasingly affected by global disorder, as was 2025, this update claims Canada will face 4 smooth quarters of 2% growth. To compare to last year, we experienced 2 quarters of growth and 2 of recession. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this government is pulling the old Paul Martin trick. Overestimate, pad numbers, and claim victory when they come in better. In fact, that would be amusing if the real pain of an economy that's not serving working people was not so devastating. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to the broader question of nation building. At key moments in our history, Canada has chosen to build, to invest in public services and infrastructure that connects us, strengthens us, prepares us for the future. New Democrats say today should be one of those moments. We face economic uncertainty, yes. We face external threats, yes. We face internal inequality and declining affordability. That is precisely when governments must step up. Yet there is not nearly enough in this update for Indigenous people, for real action on the climate crisis, to support our public servants who deliver critical services for Canadians, to invest in peace building and peacekeeping. Instead, this Liberal government has chosen to put its blind faith in the market to solve our current challenges. New Democrats see a different path. We understand that our country faces deep structural problems that cannot be solved through the profit motive and the private sector alone. Ensuring everyone has a roof over their head, a world-class education, and high-quality health care, that can only be done by government using collective power and exercising public enterprise. We need investments in non-market housing, clean energy, transportation, and public services that create jobs and build resilience. Mr. Speaker, we need to strengthen East-West connections and reduce our dependence on an increasingly unreliable U.S. We need a vision for Canada that is bold, inclusive, and forward-looking. But that is not what this economic update delivers. Mr. Speaker, the pattern is clear. On affordability, this government falls short. On inequality, this government falls short. On housing, this government falls short. On jobs and public services, this government falls short. On health care, this government falls short. And on the broader vision Canadians need, it falls short. Canadians deserve better than slogans and self-congratulations. We heard the Conservatives practice the politics of nursery rhyme politics. Now we're hearing endless sloganeering from the Finance Minister. Well, slogans don't put food on the table, and slogans are not a substitute for strong public programs. Canadians deserve a government that understands the scale of the challenges they face and responds with the urgency those challenges demand. Canadians deserve fairness, they deserve security, they deserve hope. Mr. Speaker, the New Democratic Party put forward clear priorities for this economic update. Ban surveillance pricing, implement a windfall profits tax on oil and gas giants, enforce the Canada Health Act against privatization, strengthen public health care, including pharmacare and dental care, and take real action on affordability. These are practical measures that would make a real difference in people's lives. But this government chose not to act in those ways. Instead, it has delivered an update that is out of step with the reality most Canadians are living. And that is the central issue. Because while we debate in this chamber, Canadians are making impossible choices. They are skipping meals, they are delaying care, they are taking on debt just to survive. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are not asking for miracles, they are asking for fairness. They are asking for leadership, and they're asking for a government that is on their side. So, Mr. Speaker, this moment calls for courage. It calls for a willingness to challenge the status quo and to build an economy that finally works for everyone. This economic update, unfortunately, does not meet this moment. But it is not too late to choose a different path, a path that puts people first, a path that builds a fairer, stronger, more resilient Canada. That is the path New Democrats will continue to fight for. It is the path we will work collaboratively with this government should it choose to pursue it, because Canadians deserve nothing less. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague, the parliamentary leader of the NDP, for his speech. I think we disagree on a great many things, but if I extract the essence from it, which is that this Liberal government cannot be trusted, I think he and I are probably in alignment here. My question to my honourable colleague, though, stems from the fact that much of the problems he describes from the last several years of this Liberal government have been because the NDP offered the Liberals a blank check. So when the NDP leader in the House gets up and talks about the Liberals' failure to deliver pharmacare, for example, how is that not a failing of the NDP, given that was supposedly one of their concessions to offer that support? And even last night, the NDP voted with the Liberal government to stack parliamentary committees, to give them once again carte blanche to run the parliamentary table. My question is, why have the NDP not learned their lesson?
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Well, thank you, my honourable colleague, for that question. You know, when he talks about what the NDP did last Parliament, I think that we stand in this place and in our communities with great pride. What we did with the Cox of 25 is bring dental care to 9 million Canadians. What NDP did in this House is we brought pharmacare to over 10 million Canadians and established the first public delivery with diabetes and contraceptive medications. There are people today in this country who are walking into pharmacies and walking out with their diabetes meds with their healthcare card because what the NDP did in this House. The NDP brought in anti-scab law in this place, finally protecting workers who risk violence on the picket line. I can't point to a single accomplishment of the Conservatives. With their vaunted official opposition last Parliament, they can't point to a single thing, not one. that they delivered for Canadians. But I will say is this, in terms of supporting the Liberals, it wasn't the NDP that voted for this government's throne speech, it was the Conservatives. It wasn't the NDP that voted for C2 and C5 and helped this government pass major economic programs in this House. It was the Conservatives who voted with Liberals. So there's only one coalition that I see in this House. That's the far-right Conservative Party sitting to my right and the Progressive Conservative Party I see across the aisle.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for his speech today. You know, he talked about the fact that Canadians right now across this country are really struggling. You know, really struggling to pay for groceries, to pay for rent, to find housing, to pay for gas. And this Liberal government brought forward a spring economic statement that completely missed an opportunity for the government to show that they understood what Canadians were dealing with, the challenges that Canadians were facing. You know, there's nothing for renters. There's nothing for people that use public transit. There's nothing that is helping people with the affordable crisis that they're facing. In fact, they're just redoing announcements in the most typical Liberal fashion I can imagine. But one of the things that my colleague spoke about was the healthcare system and the need for us to protect the Canada Health Act. And the need for us to look at those affordability things like dental care and pharmacare. Because if you want to talk about something that will make life more affordable for Canadians, it's ensuring that their pharmaceuticals are paid for, that they're covered. It's ensuring that dental care for themselves, for their children, for their families is covered. You know, that's something that makes life more affordable. And what I would like to ask my colleague is what would that look like for people in my province of Alberta if the Liberal government had actually lived up to the promises that they made to New Democrats and the promises that they made to Canadians?
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it gives me an opportunity to thank my honourable colleague from Edmonton Strathcona, who has been such a powerful voice for equity and for defending things like public health care that is under great threat from Conservatives in Alberta. I mean, we can actually see what would happen if ever the federal Conservatives were to get power in this place. You can see what they would do by looking to places like Alberta, where there's a constant attack on public delivery of health care, where there's a constant push for privatization, and we know where that ends. It means people with means and wealthy people, they'll always get the health care they want, and it means the rest of people, those who can't afford it, will suffer. That's what conservative approaches to health care means. But what is more disturbing to me is the way that this Liberal government, which is governing as a Conservative party, how they have adopted, with a slightly nicer language and perhaps a less severe vocabulary, the same policies. So take pharmacare. This government negotiated with us and signed a bill into law called the Canada Pharmacare Act that obligates this government to negotiate pharmacare agreements with every single province and territory in our confederation. And again, I'll repeat it. Liberals insisted we call it national pharmacare, but they've stalled at regional pharmacare. They refuse to sign any more pharmacare agreements with any provinces and territories. All they had to put was a few $1 billion into this budget, and they could have signed agreements with every remaining province and territory. They chose not to. Now, they have put tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars into military spending, so if they want to find the money, they can. So politics, Mr. Speaker, is about choices. The Liberals had a choice to make. They could have honored their word, honored the Canada Pharmacare Act, honored their 30-year commitment to public pharmacare, and put some money in to make pharmacare a reality across this country, but they chose not to. That is why New Democrats are needed in this place, because we're the only party that consistently stands up to protect, to defend, to sustain and to expand public pharmacare, which we will do in this House till every Canadian can get the health care they need from head to toe.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, and I want to thank my friend from Vancouver Kingsway, the parliamentary leader for the New Democratic Party. I would have agreed with every single thing he said, right up until when he said that the NDP was the only party in this place to stand up for universal pharmacare, which we will continue to agree with him that this current Liberal government has abandoned by not concluding agreements with every province. But universal pharmacare. We are the only country which has universal health care, public health care, that doesn't have complete coverage for prescription drugs. I'd like to ask the honourable member if he'd like to expand and explain how universal pharmacare will bring down health care costs across Canada.
Honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, well, it gives me a chance to correct the record and to agree with my honourable colleague, the leader of the Green Party, and say, yes, the Green Party is a staunch advocate for public pharmacare. I want to thank her and her party for that principled position. Thank you for that question about pharmacare, because pharmacare isn't just a moral imperative. I mean, we New Democrats believe that every Canadian should be able to get the medicine they need when they need it, regardless of the size of their bank account. It's simply an extension of the fundamental principle of our Medicare system, but it's also economically smart. Study after study after study, 7 of them in a row, has found that if we bring in universal public pharmacare in this country, that we will save anywhere from $4 to $14 billion a year and cover every single Canadian. Now, that's not just me saying that. That's what the Health Committee, the Standing Committee on Health in the House Commons found. It's what the Senate Committee has found. It's what the committee that was struck by this government by Dr. Eric Hoskins, thank you. Dr. Eric Hoskins found, the former Liberal Health Minister of Ontario, by the way, found that by making sure every Canadian has their medication, we keep Canadians healthier and we save money. And you know what? It's been estimated it's in the like $500 to $600 per person per year. And if you have a catastrophic illness, far more than that. So apparently only the New Democrats and Greens in this House are people who would take the wealth of this country and build our Canadian healthcare system so we can expand it, so that Canadians don't only get coverage for hospital and physician care, but also for mental health care, for eye care, for ear care, and for Medicare and pharmacare, and dental care. So we're going to keep fighting for that. But one thing that the Liberals have done us a favour through their budget of the fall and this spring economic update is show Canadians what they really believe in. When they don't have a minority government and other parliamentarians forcing them to do progressive things, they show you who they really are. And this government is showing who they are. They are a right-wing, conservative government that does not believe in things like public health care.
Resuming debate, reprise the débat, the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it is an honour to rise at this later hour, having had some hours pass since the Minister of Finance tabled the spring economic statement. C'est toujours un honneur pour moi.
It's always an honor for me to rise in this place and speak on behalf of the Green Party as the leader of the Green Party of Canada. It's a great honor for me. But I'm really sorry. I didn't have great expectations or great hope. You know, this isn't the budget, but it's the economic update for the spring economic update for 2026. I didn't have a lot of hope, but still I'm disappointed. And we were hoping for measures. We were hoping for commitments. We were hoping for details. And there's a lot of stuff in this economic update that's already been announced, but the details aren't here. I'll explain some of the most important things for us and some of the most important challenges facing Canada. Right now, it's clear that the Prime Minister and the Liberal government, a majority government now, we know that they are facing challenges that are out of their control.
That the situation would be easy if I were in the Prime Minister's chair. It wouldn't be easy for any government to deal with the fact that our greatest ally and greatest trading partner, our neighbor to the south, has not become, to say that the neighbor to the south is no longer a reliable ally, is a gross understatement. We're dealing with not just in terms of our regional relationships as neighbors here on Turtle Island between the United States and Canada. We're dealing with much more than that. what Donald Trump represents to the world is a geopolitical the source of geopolitical instability, that the United States and Israel together launched a war on Iran, and I agree with my colleague from the New Democrat Party, it needs to be acknowledged every time we talk about the impacts of the war in Iran, that it's an illegal war, didn't have even the minimal justifications under international law of necessity of a war. It's a war of choice. It was reckless. And much of the Spring Economic Statement talks about the economic uncertainty created by what's now happening, the disruption of the war against Iran and how it's spread with Israel's attacks on Lebanon and Iran's retaliation against numerous Gulf states. There's no question that there are challenges for any finance department or any central banker anywhere in the world in trying to project and predict what the world holds, what the economy is going to be like even 6 months from now, much less in a usual budgetary horizon of budgeting out and forecasting out 4 years' worth of spending. Still, despite those challenges, I'm surprised at this Spring Economic Statement's overall tone that is remarkably sanguine, as if we do know what's ahead, and as if we can confidently predict that we've done a great job already, that the government has done a great job already. For instance, there's numerous graphs and charts throughout this Spring Economic Statement that present a picture that's not real. Even examining the pictures that are in the budget and looking at the graphs, there's claims that we've done a great job of expanding markets outside of the United States for our fossil fuel exports. It's suggested in graphs and bar charts that if to the casual observer might seem that we had done made a major difference in how much of our fossil fuel exports don't go to the United States anymore. And those bar charts are misleading because actually 90% of our fossil fuel exports, if you look closely at the bar charts, that say there's been a big increase in non-US exports, from 3% to 10%, and when you present as percentages in bar charts, you can make that look like a lot, but the reality is still the same. About 90% of our fossil fuel exports go to the United States. Same thing for exports of our other products. Our economies are still very, very interlocked. We are mutually dependent on each other's exports and imports, and we do want trade diversification. Greens do as well. But again, the tone of the budget, of the Spring Economic Statement, is remarkably sanguine. The comment on page is actually findable. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to use props, but I just need to double check the page number. On page 27, it suggested that longer-term oil price expectations are now more firmly anchored. I'm baffled as to how any, certainly global energy economists don't share that sense of assurance that we now have more firmly anchored oil price expectations. On the contrary, around the world, energy economists are saying, well, it's extremely volatile and it doesn't seem to be settling down, and how would we possibly know? Given that, the appropriate things to do are not necessarily where this government is heading. I wanted to, for instance, for all the conversation, and there is much discussion in the budget on the Spring Economic Statement, the update, of how the Middle East uncertainty, how the war against Iran, again, the illegal war launched by the United States and Israel, is going to affect Canada's future. Well, it's as though, in reading the Spring Economic Statement, it's as though the most we can say about this is that it's been some kind of blip, that we can almost say we're going to be past it soon. Now, that's completely contradicted by the opinion of experts, and I'm saddened by the fact that there's no mention in the Spring Economic Statement of the conclusion of one of the world's leading energy economists, expert, who is the executive director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol. And what he has said very clearly, and I will quote, he said, quote, "The oil crisis triggered by the Iran war has changed the fossil fuel industry forever," unquote. What the International Energy Agency is saying is that the days of fossil fuels are now very limited, not just by the climate crisis, which is where we should have said some time ago the days of fossil fuels are limited. The days are drawing to a close. We did have former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did say that at one point, that we know that we're moving away from fossil fuels. But this is interesting. We're at a tipping point in terms of climate science where we're at risk, and global scientists are saying, look, we're at significant risk of hitting a tipping point where the whole, what's called the Atlantic Meridional overturning circulation system, which is basically, the Gulf Stream is just part of it. It's basically a vast conveyor belt of ocean currents in the Atlantic Ocean. We're at the point where global scientists are saying we're perilously close to a point where it becomes inevitable that this global conveyor, that the Atlantic Ocean conveyor system is going to stall or collapse. This is not just startling or alarming, it's terrifying. And the scientists who've done this work say they now see that the chances aren't less than 5% as previously thought, but are approaching 50-50. Now that's a global tipping point in climate science, which should be moving us off fossil fuels quite rapidly and towards tree planting and anything we can do to avoid, as the lead scientist on this report said, we must avoid the collapse of the AMOC, this Atlantic Ocean conveyor belt current system. We must avoid its collapse, quote unquote, at all costs, because the impact of this will be a rapid climatic shift that's planetary, and it soon will become inevitable and unstoppable. So that's a tipping point in global climate science. But here we have the head of the International Energy Agency saying, basically hit a tipping point due to geopolitical instability, that the world and economies around the world are not going to want fossil fuels. Now, when you look, because of the instability, because they are inevitably, inextricably tied to wars and instability. So this Spring Economic Statement is tone deaf to even the possibility that Canada's future economic stability isn't tied to boosting fossil fuels. We have new subsidies for LNG, new announcements for pipelines, and there's practically a hallelujah chorus for this, not from the Green Party. We're looking at what it means for Canada's economy, not just as if it's a small thing, our survival as human civilization, but for our economy to hardwire itself to fossil fuels when we know what we know about the transition that's happening globally based on price alone. Price point alone is moving investment dollars away from fossil fuels and rapidly to renewable energy, to solar and to wind, to geothermal, particularly solar, because solar electricity is now cheaper than coal. Well, it's astonishing that in the Spring Economic Statement, renewable energy isn't mentioned or increased. There's no commitment to expand it. Now, we do have a commitment here, which we've been waiting for some time. Again, not a prop, Mr. Speaker. I do want to check the November 4th, 2025 budget, which said at page 19, that one of the great Building Canada Strong kinds of projects would be, quote, building clean power grids for a sustainable future. Well, we've been waiting for announcements for a green electricity grid for some time. The Prime Minister has hinted at it at various points at press conferences. He said we'd see it very soon. We'd see this commitment to a green electricity grid strategy. Well, in this Spring Economic Statement, it's mentioned, all right, that this is something we're looking at as building a strong grid for Canada. But what we get isn't a commitment to fund it or build it or put it on the major projects list. No, what we get is that very soon we'll see a discussion paper. Now, that's not just underwhelming, that's appallingly negligent. We need to do more than have a discussion paper about a key piece of infrastructure that has been promised over and over again without details. And now, after all of that, what we get in today's Spring Economic Update is the promise of a discussion paper to be released soon. The ways in which this disappoints are quite numerous, and I know I have enough speaking time to get to some of them, but not all of them. Well, let's look again at what was the sort of one of the big ticket items announced yesterday. Before we get the spring economic statement, we're told Canada is unveiling a new Canadian sovereign wealth fund. It sounds wonderful. It sounds very patriotic. It sounds like a new idea, and it of course immediately brought to light and were raised comparisons with Norway and Norway's sovereign wealth fund. So we were told that there'd be details in the spring economic statement of how this was going to work, because the Prime Minister said yesterday that the sovereign wealth fund was going to give individual Canadians a chance to invest. That was going to be part of this. The sovereign wealth fund would allow individual Canadians to be part of putting together the investment dollars that we need for a sovereign wealth fund. Well, okay, first of all, let's compare it to Norway. Norway's sovereign wealth fund was built on taxation of oil revenues. Ironically, it was the Norwegian experts who came to Alberta when Peter Lougheed, who was a visionary and understood his rules for developing the oil sands, act like an owner. Oh, that would have, and don't live on oil rents, set them to aside. So the sovereign wealth fund that has allowed Norwegians to individually have millions of dollars of assets in a sovereign wealth fund built on North Sea oil. Ironically, that Norwegian sovereign wealth fund was developed based on what Peter Lougheed was doing in Alberta that was then canceled by Ralph Klein. It's interesting how we can have leaders of the same party who follow such radically different approaches. In any case, Norway's sovereign wealth fund was built on oil taxation with revenues for the benefit of all. What is Canada's strong fund going to be? Well, we don't know yet. We do know that it's based not on revenues from taxation of oil wealth. It's rather the opposite. It's based on borrowing $25 billion in, again, public borrowing and debt to call it a sovereign wealth fund. And it also says we don't have any details in today's document. The spring economic statement has no details of how this is going to work. We do know that we've created a new entity. Once again, it's very common in this government to see all kinds of new offices opened. Well, this one is and I'm sorry to keep double checking the names of these things, but the Canada, Strong Canada Fund now is going to have a Strong Canada Fund Transition Office. And the Strong Canada Fund Transition Office, once established, which of course it doesn't exist now, is going to consult. And it's going to consult widely. And then it will tell us how this Strong Canada Fund is going to work. Now, I think if it's not ready to be announced, they could wait till they had answers before announcing things. But that's just me. I'd like to know the details about something that's basically the top line headline for the spring economic statement, that we have a new, first time ever, Canadian Sovereign Wealth Fund. Now, just advice to the government, it might be useful to figure out how to do this, because the Green Party already did the research and asked the Parliamentary Budget Office to figure out how we could have funding for Canadians and for our own resources, and creating, based on the concept of Canada savings bonds, we called them Saving Canada bonds, and we had the Parliamentary Budget Office cost it out for us. So if we have strategic reserves of our resources to avoid having them shipped to the US and tariffed or whatever, we could, for instance, buy up all of Canada's potash at the price that potash producers want to receive at market prices. We could store it. We actually had the Parliamentary Budget Office include reasonable estimates for what it would cost to store the potash till we wanted to sell it to someone. And a guaranteed return on investment to individual Canadians of 5%. So I suggest and I recommend and I commend to the Minister of Finance, have a look. I've already mentioned this to the Prime Minister, on the Parliamentary Budget Office website is the research that was done. Because once the PBO does research for a political party, it doesn't just belong to the political party for whom they did the research. It's publicly available information. So they could find out how to generate $50 billion of revenue from wealth taxes, or how to use financial transaction taxes at basically 20 cents for every $100 in stock market transactions, how that would create new sources of government revenue to afford the things we need. We need to address rapidly, we need to address what's happening for youth unemployment. We need to address what's happening in the affordability crisis. Yes, we should have excess profit taxes on the grocery chains, and yes, excess profit taxes on oil and gas companies, and wealth taxes on the very, very wealthiest, not affecting most Canadians. These are things we could do. We've proven they can be done by asking the Parliamentary Budget Office to cost them out. Actually, it's striking to me that the Green Party, with our rather abysmal lack of resources compared to the Government of Canada, did a better job pointing out how we could protect our economy, protect our natural resources, avoid Trump's tariffs, and have better economic sovereignty than the Government of Canada has to date. I say that, please check if you don't believe me. We actually brought the deficit down more as a party than any other party, but not by cutting, but by generating new revenue for the Government of Canada. This government claims that there's revenue. Now, this is a shocking claim in the Spring Economic Statement, that there's more revenue by expanding a subsidy. Now, this goes back to one of the main reasons that the former Minister of Environment resigned over last year's budget. It was at page 348 in the November 2025 budget that there was a commitment that investment tax credits would apply for carbon capture, utilization, and storage, but, quote unquote, but not for enhanced oil recovery. So in this Spring Economic Statement, we finally find out, because it was very clear that the commitment made to Danielle Smith in the November 27th MOU with Alberta very specifically said that there would be investment tax credits available for enhanced oil recovery. Now, this is a little tricky. I'll try to get through it quickly, Mr. Speaker, because we had to ask a lot of questions in our off-the-record lockup with Finance Canada officials, because I just found it too perplexing for words to hear that now that they were going to admit that as of today, there will be investment tax credits available for enhanced oil recovery. And then, astonishingly, at page 64, it says that this will, quote, increase federal revenues by $395 million over 4 years. I had to press, because how does, I asked, increasing a subsidy to the oil and gas industry increase federal revenue? They had to admit that was sort of, might be considered misleading, because it doesn't actually increase government revenue. What it does is it decreases some government spending as against the system of November 2025, because then the carbon capture, utilization, and storage piece, it meant that the Government of Canada was supporting keeping carbon in the ground, and that meant that the Government of Canada was paying to help the oil and gas industry storing carbon. And when they don't store as much, because with enhanced oil recovery, they take it out of the ground, increase the profits of the oil industry by allowing that oil to come out of the ground, be sold, and burned. And I kept pressing, how does that increase federal revenues, as the Spring Economic Statement claims at page 64? Well, finally it was admitted, it wasn't exactly that it increases the revenue, it decreases the spending. So the federal government no longer has to provide as much money to the oil industry for the purpose of keeping carbon in the ground. It just creates more profits for the oil industry and somewhat reduces the spending of the federal government. It's not new revenue. There's so much here that I found difficult to absorb and hard to accept. Particularly, I'd turn quickly to the government's vision on artificial intelligence. And I have to say on this, after yesterday's protests of young people on the lawns of Parliament concerned about the impacts of artificial intelligence and screen time on their mental health and well-being. Here we have the government's vision, artificial intelligence for all. Now, that's just plain tone deaf. We need to have legislation that regulates online harms from this development. We're not going to be able to stop AI, but the idea that we're going to have a homegrown AI industry that creates lots of jobs for Canadians is hooey. But it's a big part of, apparently, the vision of this government for the future of Canada's economy. Mr. Speaker, I'll just close by saying this. There are opportunities for Canada, even in this world of geopolitical instability. There are opportunities for us to stand up for human rights, to stand up for other democracies, to only trade with other democracies that respect human rights, and to be a beacon of hope and sanity in this world. But to decide, as though we're still living in the 1950s, that our future lies in fossil fuels, that economic growth and growing the GDP is enough to make the world and Canada a more prosperous country with greater societal well-being is simply wrong. It doesn't lead us there. History has taught us that. What makes Canada's economy strong is economic sovereignty. What gives us resilience is not to be dependent on the United States to the degree we are, but to broaden our link arms with democracies that respect human rights and climate action, and that it is not too late to achieve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank my colleague for her discourse this afternoon. One of the things that I saw in this budget that alarmed me was the change to contributions on the CPP, on the Canadian Pension Plan. Now, I've been very, very concerned about the Canadian Pension Plan because, of course, in my province of Alberta, there has been a serious attack on the CPP by the Conservative government in that province. Now, I've brought forward legislation, C-207, in fact, that would protect the CPP, and the government didn't choose to do that. In fact, what they chose to do is reduce the contribution. And I wonder if that's because our current Liberal government, or I should say progressive Conservative government, sees the CPP the same way that the Conservatives do, as a business tax, instead of deferred wages that, in fact, workers have contributed to so that they can have a dignified retirement. You know, the CPP is something we should all be proud of in this country, and we should be contributing to it so we can ensure that people in our communities can retire with dignity and have that security for their senior years. So I wonder if the member could speak to her thoughts on this reduction in the contributions for the CPP. Thank you.
Member for Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Well, I totally agree with my honourable colleague from Edmonton Strathcona that this is also worrying. It appears that what the government thinks is that there's enough of a surplus in the Canada Pension Plan that it's okay to reduce contributions. But we need to know that there's not going to be a reduction in the benefits to which senior Canadians are entitled, and we need to know that it's not seen as a business tax. I'd also have one quick thing, if I can, is the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board Act. That's one of the pieces of legislation that should be amended to ensure that our investments, there's $80 billion in our Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, and they have access to $80 billion. Most of it is invested in the United States, because all they look at is return on investment, not thinking of Canada first in where we put our Canada Pension Plan dollars for investments. It's shocking.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. It being 6:58 p.m. pursuant to an order made on Tuesday, April 21st, 2026, this House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 2 p.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24-1.